Yeah, ready to keep going with this Ready Player 2 series. I really enjoy this, so I'm glad to get back on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Merry Christmas. It's time. It's
Yes.
that time of year. We're getting way more time to play these games now because of the fact that we're all taking a little break from all the other shit that we have to deal with in life and just play a lot more video games. That's what people do over Christmas break, right? Play video games. That's what I always did growing up.
Absolutely. That's what mature men do.
Exactly. Yeah. As a kid, I was always like, well, this is the one or two games I get out of the year, so I'm gonna play the shit out of it for Christmas until I beat it, and then not have anything until my birthday, like, comes in
Are
X
you
number of
familiar
months.
with
But
Schrodinger's
for whatever
cat?
reason, we're still doing it now as
Until
grown-ass
you
men. So
decide
let's
what
see what happens.
happens, everything is happening at once.
So
Like in
yeah, and drink
Detroit.
beer. Now that we're
Yes.
adults, now we drink
Yes.
beer and we play video games, and
I would
that's
like to be a
that's
good
what makes it
person
very
and
adult.
say that that's the big difference between then and now, but it's really not that different. It's still basically
Uh,
the same thing I was doing back then during Christmas break from school. So, on that note, as we do know, this is, as we mentioned, this is our Ready Player 2. We're doing our playthrough of the Detroit Become
Detroit.
Human, and we are going to see. Right now, we're going into what, mission 6 of this whole
Yes.
shenanigans. Yeah,
And this mission is called Partners.
partners. Yes.
And CraigMakk, we have so far, if you've been following us, if you haven't, by the way, all of the old episodes are posted up on our YouTube channel. Jump on our YouTube channel, give us a
Yes.
follow. YouTube.com/LiveManCave,
I
just
hope
like
you're
this.
okay
Our
today.
Twitch channel, which is Twitch TV
Sometimes things can be
/Live Man
difficult.
Cave, as you know, because you're watching it maybe
I'm
on
here
Twitch or
for
maybe
you.
you're watching on YouTube. Anyway, all of our episodes are on YouTube. If you've been watching them, they feature three main characters. Today, if you want to learn more about what's happened with the other characters and the general story, we highly encourage you to go back and watch those. Our general format, by the way, is normally Craig plays through this thing. I kind of like fade into the background and make snarky comments here and there.
Yes.
But then after he's done playing it through, we talk about how this series touches on a lot of real life issues or just whatever it inspires us to talk about. And we have like a conversation afterwards. So at the very least, if you're just like, look, I just want to get caught up on the current stuff as fast as possible, and I don't have time to sit through all the conversations, just watch the beginning of the video play itself. Just watch through that, see where we are in the story, and then come back and join us. But if you are joining us now live on Twitch, we encourage you to hang around, stay in the chat, see what kind of conversation this inspires for you. Anyway, today's story is going to center on Connor, and you've only seen Connor in the original Mission 1 story.
Mission. Yep.
Yes. And so, do you want to catch us up on what happened really generally in that first opening story, Craig,
Yes.
before we move to Mission 6?
Absolutely. So I specifically also want to mention that I like the way you describe the way that Ready Player 2 runs, which seems like you basically described it
man
very
has not
similar to a way
discovered
that, like,
something he will
probably a
die
normal
for.
conversation
He's not fit to live.
or a day
That's a
in
quote
the
from
life
Martin Luther King.
with our
I
significant
thought you'd
others
like it.
would be, because it's basically like I let the other person do all the important shit while I fade into the background and make some snarky ass comments, and then I just talk a lot of shit about what they just did and tell them if they did it right or wrong. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. There you go. Welcome to the
Sounds
man
like you're the
cave.
victim.
Nailed it.
Sounds like you're the victim of this.
Nailed it. Sounds okay. So anyway, speaking of, so in this game, or in this mission up to this point, what we have seen with Connor in the opening mission was basically the introduction to the world of Detroit. We basically saw him, he just kind of got off an elevator, and turns out you are starting in a mission. It was called the hostage situation, or the hostage, right? Something like that, right?
Right.
And so his entire thing was essentially he was called in for a mission where for this situation, this case where there was a android that was part of this family who had taken the child of the family hostage and was basically standing out, I guess, on their patio or their balcony overlooking the city. I mean, they were super high up in an apartment building. He was holding this child hostage,
The most
and
important thing is
essentially
not to
a lot of
live,
it seemed to be
but to
based
have a
upon the
reason
idea
to
of him
live.
he was being replaced or being
That's a quote from Jean
he was being
Genot,
replaced for a better
French
model.
writer.
And so you find out through the course of it that obviously he has felt like part of the family, whereas they just think he is something that can be just thrown away. He had earlier, we found out through my investigation, he had shot the father, correct? Right? He killed the dad
Yep.
while the dad was placing the order, and then took the child, the daughter, out onto the ledge and was holding a gun on her. And I was basically brought in as a hostage negotiator with the sniper team, or the SWAT team was basically kind of, they were out in the room trying to talk him down, but they brought me in to basically be like, yo, Connor, talk this dude down, like resolve this situation.
And I don't know if you mentioned, but Connor is himself an android.
Yes.
So
yes.
much to the horror of the mother in that family, she's like, "Oh my God, you guys sent in an android to negotiate with this broken android."
Right.
And then, long story short, Connor negotiates successfully, gains the trust of the other android, and then gets the android shot and saves the kid. And the android goes, "You lied to me, Connor."
Talk him down, and then they shoot him in the side of the face, right through the mouth, and they take him out, and that was the end of that. And it very much kind of came across, and again, you can go back and listen to that earlier, that episode when we talk about that, but it had a bit of an element of kind of like early stages of the movie RoboCop, when RoboCop still hasn't yet necessarily developed feeling per se, or at least not outwardly expressing feelings. That whole everyone's favorite line when he saves the lady from saves the lady who's about to get sexually assaulted by those guys, and he shoots the one guy through her legs and his dick, and she's like, "Oh my God, thank you so much," and he's like, "You're suffering emotional crisis. I will notify a rape crisis center," or something like that. Like, he just doesn't even know how to emote back to a woman who is how to process the emotion of this woman is breaking down. That's kind of the way Connor reacts to this situation. He's very clinical about it, at least early on, and then we kind of debate, and you can listen to us talk. We debate whether or not did some of that emotion maybe start to bleed through the earlier stages, or the earliest stages of the deviancy, right, in this game, of them starting to kind of go offline, right? Become free to will, or free thinkers, or whatever. So you can go back.
Let
and
me stop you there, Craig,
part.
because this game, this is a good time to mention. This game is really what you make of the story.
Right.
There, how you view the character, how you play the character will shape how the character ultimately acts, and how the storyline will change based on it. So I really, really mean that. Like, it's not like sometimes with the Telltale games, like, people complain that, there's the illusion of control. In this game, things you do and the way that you carry yourself out and the way you see your character will shape the actual story. So one key element that you and I deferred on in that first one, we were talking afterwards, was how we thought Connor felt or interpreted his performance, or the other android getting shot and him recovering the kid, how we thought that he thought it went. And I remember your impressions, if I recall them correctly, were that Connor was like, hey, mission accomplished, this is what I was supposed to do, and like his look back at the other cops, like reasserting himself, like, yes, I have fulfilled my value, I hold my value. And I told you, I think I got the feeling that something about that situation bothered him. Yeah. Like maybe some shame in there, and you made the argument, well, he's not a deviant, so I don't believe he feels that. And again, if as we proceed through this game, if that's how you view Connor, then I encourage you to play him that way, because you will have choices to make as the game continues.
Absolutely. And part of that discussion too was to say that was why I was trying to allude to the fact that we came from that. As we have through multiple parts in this game, but we have come at it from two different ends of the spectrum, or from two different perspectives, right? Like, I see it one way, you see it a different way, and so it's been interesting to have those discussions on, like I was mentioning with Connor. What was that the beginnings of him starting to bleed through, or was that not, right? And so it's interesting when you go back and you hear those earlier episodes now, and you think, you kind of, if you are just coming to this now, when you go back and listen to those earlier episodes, and then kind of hear us continuing to talk about it, and you'll hear, because a lot more, to Jeff's point, a lot more of the playthrough part is me talking through my thought processes around the decisions I'm making, and you kind of like asking questions about those thought processes, so then we can just dissect it later on. So I'm trying to maintain true to my interpretation of those characters, not to say that I'm going to be immobile, right, that I'm not going to change, because things throughout the course of the game may change, just like anything. I might get a different interpretation, but I'm trying to role-play this game, right? I'm trying to play it as, here's where I see these characters are right now, and that could be fluid, but I don't want to just, the one thing you never want to do in a game like this, or it destroys it to me, I think, is literally just do a like rock paper scissors. I'm gonna hit square to answer this way. Now I'm gonna hit triangle, like, because then your guy's gonna be just like a schizophrenic, like, you know, all over the place answering. Like 1 minute he's deviant, the next minute he's like RoboCop, the next minute he's here, and you're just like, this doesn't make any sense. So if you try to kind of pick a lane, stay in it, and even if that lane changes over the course of the playthrough as new things come to light and as you find new pieces of information,
remember, you can change the
I think
difficulty settings
that allows the
in
game
the
to kind of
section.
play in a much more realistic, you know, manner, and it allows us to play out our thought process on screen that you guys will get to listen to. So I think that makes it way more interesting. And then also, for any of you who don't know, just for purposes of breaking down this game, at the end, it does have a bit of that butterfly effect mentality where they will show you the different decisions that you made and where things branch. They don't show you the other options you could have made. They just show you the fact that there were other choices you could have made, right? They say you could have done this, you could have done that. You know, unless you see all the, like, unless all the options are on the table and evident to you at the point. There are certain things where they'll show you, here are the 3 branches and you chose this one, right? But there'll be other things that they'll say, hey, there was this other thing you could have done. We're not going to tell you what it is, but maybe next time you play through, try to figure out there's something else in the room you could have found, or there's something else you could have talked to, someone else you could have talked to, or things like that. So it gives you a little bit of an interest in replaying the game for purposes of doing this, because Jess has also already played this game through, as he mentioned. What we will do is, when we do break down some of those decision trees, when there are decision trees that differ from what I did to you, like when you did something different than what I ended up doing, you will share some of that, right? To kind of like,
for your cooperation.
Like add a little bit of breath to some of those discussions. But you also have held back some of the like in-depth stuff about it because you don't want to change the way I'm necessarily playing the game, right? So it's kind of a fine line we're walking on. How far down do we want to share the decision tree mentality that's available to us? But we don't want to do it too far that it changes that. Like now I'm like, shit, oh, if I had known that, I would have done this. So now I'm going to play it differently because I know information that I didn't find out organically, right? So it's kind of an interesting tightrope that we've been walking up to this point, and we're going to continue to play it that way.
So one more thing, Craig, before we actually get started into the gameplay, which I'm sure people are anxious to get to as well. But one thing we cannot forget on this journey, our fuel, our life force, it's the beer, CraigMakk. And I want to know, what are you drinking as you go through this? What is our beer of the show?
Beer of the show! So this time, again, I know I've been trending a little bit more towards, you know, it's holiday season. I've been having, last time we played through, I had the Grand Winter, the Winter Grand Cru. So I've been kind of trying to have some more winter beers that kind of get me in that holiday spirit. I'm sitting next to my lit up Christmas tree, and I got the lights all over the man cave bar and everything. It's all lit up. It's a winter wonderland down here. So the beer I decided to start off with, I am going with.
Detroit was on
so
the
you know Saranac, the brewer, right?
A route
They're good. They're the pumpkin, that good pumpkin beer.
Yep, they have a very good pumpkin beer, and we have talked about that on the show. So I am having Saranac's, one of their seasonals is their Saranac Caramel Porter, which is a porter with natural flavor and caramel color. So this one is, it says, our caramel porter is a fan favorite, and it's back. We took a traditional style porter and added real caramel for a deliciously rich flavor. A dark English style porter brewed with roasted barley, chocolate, and caramel malts. This beer is made with real ingredients. It's a dark beer with a sessional ABV of 5.4%. So this one is, I mean, it looks, if you like caramel, the bottle is literally the reason why I bought this one, because it shows, it's a drawing of a like an illustration somebody drew of it's a goblet glass with a porter that has like a real nice head on it. It's kind of like it's like almost overflowing over the top. You can see a little bit, and there are right next to it 2 caramel little like caramel squares, and there's caramel drizzle on top of the beer itself. And so I love caramel. Like I love it in ice cream. I love it as candy. I love it in, you know, mixed with chocolate. So the idea of seeing this glass that basically had, you know, the whole thing like with the caramel right on top of the beer and everything made this literally just look like dessert in a glass to me. It looks delicious. So I'm about to try this bad boy out, and I will let you know if it lives up to this amazing drawing that they have here. Pop this guy.
Nice.
Oh God, you can smell it right out of the gate. You can immediately smell like you can smell the caramel, kind of chocolate and caramel flavoring to it almost immediately. So it definitely it's got the smell, let's say.
Use a Saranac Winter Porter?
Caramel porter. Oh, wow.
Wait, so it's Saranac Caramel Porter?
Caramel porter, yep.
If a man
Saranac
has not
Caramel.
discovered
What's the
something
ABV?
he will die for.
5.4.
He's not fit to live.
And how does it
That's a quote from
taste?
Martin Luther King. I thought you'd like it.
Oh, that's good. So it is literally almost exactly the way they described it. I mean, it is. I know we've talked quite a bit as of late about beers that are like not, when they're good at not making it overwhelmingly kind of, the two flavors smashing into each other like a car wreck, and you're kind of like, oh my God, which one do I, who do I triage first? Because they're both going to die. Like this is not that at all. This is definitely a porter, and it is almost like it's halfway through on the back of your tongue. You catch like it's a little bit. It gets a little sweeter on the back, on the back end, and then the finish is you just get this like kind of pop of caramel, like almost like you threw a caramel candy in after you took a swig, and almost let it just kind of sit on your tongue. That's the kind of way I love it, right? Because like we said, we don't necessarily want to feel like, all right, the first taste tastes like a dessert, but by the third one, I'm going to be like, this is too sweet. I can't finish this. This one is definitely not that. It goes down perfectly, and it just gives you that perfect aftertaste of sweetness and caramel flavor mixed with that kind of chocolatey front end. This is going to be a good one to sit down. And the 5.4 makes it even better to be able to play through, and maybe I won't fuck up Connor's life right now because I won't get that drunk. So we'll see. All right, so that's from me. What about you, dude?
All right, I was going to my local liquor store. I didn't go to the good one, so I was kind of got stuck with the this one's more convenient. So I was gonna make the easy choice of like Sam Cherry Wheat or something like that, which those are common go-tos that I enjoy. But then I saw this one in the fridge, and I was like, the curiosity got the best of me. So I am going to feature here because we're taking chances with this Ready Player 2 thing. I'm going to take chances on this one and see how it goes. I chose Budweiser Copper Lager. Wow. It is a special edition beer. Now, you know me. Normally, I hate Budweiser. Yeah. But this one is a Jim Beam limited edition. So the description reads, to celebrate the freedom we have as Americans to do and drink what we love, Budweiser brewmasters and Jim Beam's master distillers came together to create this first ever collaboration brew to toast the 85th anniversary of the repeal of Prohibition on December 5th, 1933. Wow, why didn't we talk about that earlier? Introducing Budweiser Reserve Collection Copper Lager, a flavorful American copper lager brewed with two-row barley and aged on real Jim Beam bourbon barrel staves for a toasted oak aroma, a deliciously nutty taste with caramel, rye, and vanilla notes, and a smooth finish. So when I read that description, I was like, normally I hate Budweiser.
Yes.
But I don't want to be that snob that says I only drink beers from like that, from a special brewery that you can only find if you have a ticket from the hipsters that you see on the special street corner. Right. So I believe that big companies, if they,
I just want to say to you, just so you know, so everyone else also hears us say this, there is a very wide fucking gulf the size of the Grand Canyon between a special hipster brew that you can only get with a special fucking ticket that they only let you know about if you wear certain type of glasses and you wear shorts outside in the 30-degree weather, and fucking anything made by Budweiser. Just so we know, there's a whole lot of other shit in the middle. So I have no faith that this will be good, but maybe you will prove me wrong. Let's see. I am excited.
This is like the Walmart of beers, right? Budweiser. Not even. It's the Kmart of beers, right? Because they're just going to mass produce shit.
I don't think they like to call themselves the Walmart of beers. I think they have already a very specific name they go for.
They're all about moving those units. They sell a lot of units to cheap beer, and they're not necessarily known for quality. Right. But I think if a big company took their resources and actually funded somebody to try something real here, I mean, I don't even think Jim Beam is great whiskey. Right. It's all right. It's another mass-produced thing. But I prefer other whiskeys. But let's see how this turns out. The liquor store owner was a fan of it. All right. Immediately as I smell it, I can kind of smell the caramel notes.
Okay.
I don't really smell the vanilla because what is kind of overwhelming the smell of the caramel is just like the smell of the beer. Yeah, which is it doesn't really smell like Budweiser though.
Okay.
It's just like a little. I'm sorry, it smells a little differently than the cheap beer that is Budweiser. By the way, I just want to also point out that this is 6.2% ABV.
Okay.
So this gives me a little hope that they did something different with the beer.
That's
all right. So let's see. They sell them in these little bottles. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say this isn't good.
Are you familiar
It's not.
with Schrodinger's
It's
cat?
not piss like
Until you
Budweiser
decide
normally
what
tastes
happens.
like, right? But
Everything is happening at once. Like
this
in a
tastes like they stepped their game up from like really bad to like a bad beer but with a higher alcohol content.
Okay.
Which makes
great.
it more palatable.
Awesome.
So I would not recommend getting the Budweiser Copper because even again I'm not a big fan of the Jim Beam. So
Right.
I can taste the whiskey notes on the back end. I'm not saying Jim Beam is bad because like minimum standards wise that it's gonna meet. But there's much better whiskeys out there, and the Jim Beam is not saving that. It's Budweiser.
Are you saying
beer.
so? If you take one of your least favorite breweries and mix it with one of your least favorite whiskeys, it's not going to bring it up to a standard where you're like, but together they form like Voltron into like no, you're just like no, it's just bad beer mixed with whiskey I don't necessarily love.
I was hoping that the two companies that were not normally focused on quantity over quality in terms of moving units.
It really reflects your personality.
It would this was like a passion project where you get like what Coors Company makes Blue Moon, right?
Right.
Where they come up with something that's like, oh, Blue Moon, like, oh, this is actually decent,
Right.
Oh, I forgot it's Coors,
Right.
This is, I would not get this again.
Okay.
Yeah, well, hey, it was worth a try. I will
too.
drink the 6-pack, though, because it'll probably get me drunk. And like I said, it's not as bad as normal Budweiser beer, and let's be honest, if I had nothing else to drink at this point, I would be drinking Budweiser beer. I'd take Natty Ice at this point, whatever,
Okay. Nice.
So. We've got no other options.
Killer start. There you go. I like it.
But,
well, Merry Christmas.
Budweiser, Copper Lager, for when you have no other options. That should be the slogan.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they'd be okay with it at this point. They're like, whatever, you know what you're getting with this. We're not fucking fooling anybody.
CraigMakk, I took a chance, and it did not pay off this time.
It can't always pay off, yeah.
Sometimes you got to take a L.
Here's the most important question I have for you, though, before we get this thing started. Is it, or is it not, better than Bud Light Lime?
I'm gonna say yes because it's better because Bud Light Lime. In Bud Light Lime, the plus side was that the lime kind of was like very plentiful, so it overshadowed the Budweiser taste. Right. That was the big bonus for me. It's like a cheap beer. There's nothing else to drink. You're at a softball game. You need to fill up a big fucking cooler for everybody. Go ahead and get you some Bud Light Lime because the lime is, you won't really taste the Budweiser that much.
Right.
This one, there's more alcohol and notes of, some mediocre whiskey that will,
Perfect.
that
So Bud Light
might
Lime,
make you forget the.
Bud Light Lime remains the floor of our podcast, is what you're saying. It remains.
Yeah.
It remains the embarrassment of our podcast.
I think the floor had the absolute, or the basement would have then been the Four Loko grog we made that was horrendous.
In our defense, that was us mixing things in ways that weren't intended by man or God. So we took the L on that one, not anybody else. We were just like, hey, guess what? We're drunk. Let's try to see how this works out. And the answer was, spoiler alert, not well for anybody. But at least we can say we did that, and so we've gotten better since then. We've made Man Cave, beers, and they've been okay. So we're doing okay for ourselves now. We were young then, Jess. We didn't know what we were doing. We were children. It was the early days of the podcast internet.
You take chances, CraigMakk, and they don't pay off. And you got to have those learning moments every once in a while. And this is mine. Do not trust Budweiser for any kind of beer.
matter what
I
they
don't
write
care
on the side
how
of their-
special
Or to
reserve. Yeah.
Remember, you can
I don't
change
care how
the
great they make it
difficulty
sound.
settings in the options
It's
section.
not good.
I'm actually like semi-surprised that they went the route of like they didn't go the what's it called, the Blue Moon route, where they're like, oh, let's try really hard to bury the label, like where you don't necessarily know that we're Budweiser. Like this was them just being like, whatever, man, we suck. It is what it is. We just threw in extra alcohol there so you'll get drunk faster. We're still going to sell it.
You know what
Probably
it is?
90% of middle America will still buy this. It'll
Right.
be fine.
Right.
It'll be okay.
That's what
It'll
it
be
is.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
these guys are like we have a market of people that are gonna buy our trash beer just because we're like we're American. We're American. Buy our beer. It's an American beer. So they're gonna buy the beer and they're gonna drink the Jim Beam whiskey because Jim Beam has like, you know, the whole same thing, like, yeah, this is America and we make our whiskey and look at these bourbon barrels and here's Mila Kunis and, you know, she's putting her tits by the barrels and,
Wow,
you know,
okay.
and
Is that the
now
pitch?
and you
Was
guys
that the commercial pitch they had?
that was
You
exact
just sounded
word for
like
word.
You were the marketing guy. You're like, yeah, we got barrels. We got that Mila
Yeah.
Kunis chick. She's got her
Whatever
tits all
her
over the barrel.
ethnic name is, probably
important thing is not
Putin
to live,
related or something.
but to
I
have
don't
a
know,
reason
but
to
like, but you've been hearing a lot from these
That's a quote from
hipsters
Jean
and
Giono,
these, you know,
a French
colored Americans about these other types of craft beers. We don't go for that. We're getting more American. We're gonna make our craft Jim Beam and Budweiser, and it's gonna be fucking awesome. And then you drink it and you're like, it's
Perfect.
not fucking awesome.
Awesome. Well,
All right.
hey,
We
sometimes
probably did
swing and a
offend
miss.
the whole
Just
class.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah.
It's all good.
I did not mean to be offensive there, but
I don't know.
yeah.
Got a little off the rails there. It's okay. I just want to make sure that anyone listening can clearly tell the difference between my voice, CraigMakk, and that man's voice, Serious Jest, that just said all that stuff. So when the internet comes back to bite us, at least you can't sound clip me on that one and use it against me. On that note, you think we should dive into this world of
let's get it started.
racism and see what happens in this game?
Yes.
Take one quick
Let's
sip
do
of my
it.
caramel porter. Let's hit continue.
I'm just really angry I have to
Second.
drink this beer for the
That
rest
is a
of it.
bummer. I feel bad for you. If I could send a beer to you right now, I would be a drone. I would do it. Unfortunately,
Did you
I'd
know
actually,
the
that's not
modern
lie.
Actually,
I'd probably
choices
actually just drink
we
up here
hope for
myself.
better
And
things?
just still laugh at you
I
for
t-
having to drink this trash that you have. So
I took a swig and just winced right now.
awesome. Yeah, this
All right.
it does seem like this seems like the perfect beer for that. You know, like in all those movies that take place in like areas of America that I'm not entirely familiar with, where people every time they go into a bar, they're like, "Give me a beer and a shot," and they always do the beer and then like do
Yes.
the shot. I was like, this feels
That's
like
what
that
this
is made
tastes
for this.
like.
It's like it has to
That's
be
what
that.
this
Yeah.
tastes like. You gave me shitty beer followed by like a mediocre shot,
Right.
and this is the aftertaste.
Oh, America's amazing. All right. On that note, are you ready to go? This.
Yeah.
So this game's about to be the aftertaste to the beer that you are drinking right now. Let's see what happens to poor Connor when I hit continue. Here we go. Oh, I always forget that there's this fucking
There's a loading screen.
anticlimactic bullshit.
Meantime, we
after.
can take a strap in, take another swig of this. Oh, that's bad.
Damn you, loading screen. All right. Another beer. So how you doing? Everything's okay, Jess? Just
I
small
can't
talk,
believe my liquor store owner actually. It was not my liquor store owner, but like the liquor store I hardly ever go to because I suspected at one point it was just a front for like a drug dealing front.
huh? Right.
I think the previous owners were using it for that because you would go in
Ooh, speaking
and
of
it was
bars,
just
here we go.
boom. Okay,
Let's see.
I'm gonna stop that other story, which is possibly incriminating.
Yes, probably don't.
Well, not for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't buying drugs.
Yeah, but it'll be on the internet, and then they'll find out.
Yeah, and I don't want to snitch.
Ooh, no androids allowed. Wow, racist. Of course. All right. let's
No
see.
dogs either.
Very strict rules.
Very strict rules.
All right, let's find. Look, there he is. Oh, what's in that face? There we go. A mismatch for Edward Dempsey. Nope, can't see her face.
Oh, freaking schlub. I bet you Edward
And-
Dempsey drinks Budweiser Copper Lager
Ooh,
Reserve.
it's that guy. He's the Pet Cemetery dude.
And it's correct. He is from Pet Cemetery. Yeah.
Yes.
He's also in The Green Mile, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he is also the cop.
Or Shawshank.
Yeah, Shawshank.
Is it Green Mile or Shawshank?
I don't know, he's a cop in like so many things.
Yeah.
Why am I unable to... Oh, I can't scan that dude's face. No? I'm just gonna awkwardly stand next to you? They're not giving me any fucking prompts to do anything. I did it. I found him already. What do you want me to do? Okay, weird. This is super weird, dude. What am I doing wrong? Oh, okay. Wait, now it's still telling me to scan. This is so weird. Alright, I guess just scan everyone. That's Jonah Graham. Alright, cool. Wait, who was that? Oh, okay. Let's see who this guy is. This is Kim Johan. Born 1999. Whoa. He's young.
Well, this is 20 years in the future, so he's almost 40.
Yeah. Alright, this is Jimmy Peterson. No criminal record. Alright, I'm just gonna keep going. Let's see. Who are you? Dennis Ward. Oh, the narcotics supplier. Anyone in here I need to scan? Oh, he's checking out his hair? That's pretty cool. Androids are just like us, Jest. Oh, ban androids, it says. Nice.
Well, if that was me, I wouldn't have been checking my hair. I put my dick out in front of the mirror. Admired it.
Yeah, of course you would. Chris Roberts.
You like that? You like that?
This is super confusing, but am I just supposed to... Samuel McCrae. Let's get everyone out. Christopher Gray. He's got a DUI. Let's check that dude over there. Derek Myers. This has to be super awkward for everyone in here that I'm just obviously walking around scanning everyone. Can I go in there? Especially in a bar that has the sign that says no Android. I'm wearing a jacket that says fucking Android on it.
That's funny.
Alright, can I go in there? No, that's the women's bathroom. Can I go in here even though all they let me do is look? There's nothing to see here. What is happening?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't remember this being this involved back when I was. I thought you just found him and talked to him. I remember just talking to him.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm really hoping it's not glitching.
I'm like wondering, am I supposed to, like, if I didn't hold it down long enough or something? But oh,
There
that
you
was
go.
weird. Oh, okay, so it was just maybe I didn't hold it down.
Lieutenant
long enough.
Anderson, my name is Connor. I'm the android sent by CyberLife. I looked for you at the station, but nobody knew where you were. They said you were probably having a drink nearby. I was lucky to find you at the 5th bar.
What do you want?
I love the way he talks.
You were assigned a case early this evening. A homicide involving a CyberLife android. In accordance with procedure, the company has allocated a specialized model to assist investigators.
Well, I don't need any assistance. Especially not from a plastic asshole like you. Just be a good little robot and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but I must insist. My instructions stipulate that I have to accompany you.
You know where you can stick your instructions?
No.
Persist with
Where?
Never mind.
I understand that some people are not comfortable in the
Hey,
presence of
looks at him.
androids, but
I am perfectly comfortable.
It's like the acting
back off
shines
before I
through
crash
even in the
like an empty
CGI,
beer.
man.
You know what? I'll buy you one for the road. What do you say? Bartender, the same again, please.
See that, Jim? Wonders of technology. Make it a double.
Wow.
He likes you more now.
Yeah, I like that he liked me more now that I was like, he's like, now I'm neutral around you instead of tense. because you bought me a drink.
Did you say homicide?
Yes, I did. All right, here we go. It worked. I just had to get him drunk, more drunk. Also, why would
You
the
wait
robot
here.
try? This guy's drunk as shit.
Yeah. Probably
My
didn't let him
instructions are
try.
to accompany you to the crime scene, Lieutenant.
This guy doesn't
I
seem
don't
like he
give a
plays
fuck
by the
about your
rules
instructions.
much.
I told you to wait here, so you shut the fuck up and you wait here.
Equipping orders, selecting priority. Follow lieutenant. Alright.
Josh Douglas for Channel 16. Can you confirm that this is a homicide?
I'm not confirming anything.
Let's see if I wait. What happens? Oh man, they're doing this. I can't tell if this is like if I wait long enough they'll let me just stay in the car like he told me to, or if now it's just like hanging on the screen because I'm not doing anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what
I
they
know
should
exactly.
do, like if it just like went and eventually the exit thing went away, like okay cool, you waited long enough, now we're gonna move on. But now I'm just like I can't tell if I'm just gonna sit here for 5 minutes and then be like I guess nothing's gonna happen.
And then still have to get out.
Yeah, and then I still have to get out and look like I had a malfunction in the car or something.
I like that you're doing this. I didn't have the patience to do this.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to get out now because it's not.
Yeah, because plus we're streaming this, and I can
Yeah.
imagine like
That's what I'm saying. Like
and
that's
maybe it
what's-
was just you sitting in a room by yourself.
Oh, I
you
could
might
be like,
say,
I'm gonna
"Ah,
go get
let me
another
just-"
beer. Yeah, I'm gonna go get a beer.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Typical DPD. They don't tell us shit.
Androids are not permitted beyond this point.
It's with me.
Wait, you told me to stay in the car. No, oh, this is so weird.
What part of stay in the car didn't you understand?
Your order contradicted my instructions, Lieutenant.
You don't talk, you don't touch anything, and you stay out of my way. Got it?
Got it.
Evening, Hank. We were starting to think you weren't going to show.
Yeah, that was the plan till this asshole found it.
Until this asshole.
So, you got yourself an android, huh?
Oh, very funny. Just tell me what happened.
We had a call around 8 from the landlord. The tenant hadn't paid his rent for a few months, so he thought he'd drop by, see what was going on. That's when he found the body. Jesus, that smell. It was even worse before we opened the windows. The victim's name's Carlos Ortiz. He has a record for theft and aggravated assault. According to the neighbors, he was kind of a loner. Stayed inside most of the time. They hardly ever saw him.
Wow, stayed easy in. Wasn't worth calling everybody out in the middle of the night. Could have waited till morning.
I'd say he's been there for a good 3 weeks. We'll know more when the coroner gets here. There's a
He's totally
kitchen knife over here. Probably the murder weapon.
drugs.
Any sign of a break-in?
More of that red ice that we saw
The
in.
landlord said the front
in that,
door was
Detroit
locked from the
house
inside.
where
All the
Carl
windows
was
were
staying.
boarded up. The killer must have gone out the back way.
What do we know about his android?
Android involved.
Not much. The neighbors confirmed he had one, but it wasn't here when we arrived.
Ew. Gross.
I gotta get some air. Make yourself at home. I'll be outside if you need me.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. Eating club. Huh. God, this place is disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, like, separate from the dead person. This place is just disgusting.
it's perfect. It's way too neat. No human rights like this. Chris, was this written in the victim's blood?
I would say so. We're taking samples for analysis.
Trying to examine the victim.
Red ice. Seems our friend Carlos liked to party.
Oh, gross. He is really horrible. Chocolate teas. Estimated time of death 11:30. Wow, 286. Really let yourself go, Carlos.
Carlos looks like an extra from The Deuce. Like one of those guys that goes down to the fucking peep shows.
Wow, 28 stab wounds. Deceased more than 19 days ago. Theft and aggravated assault. Nice. Oh, I love this part. This is cool. The reconstruction.
Well, this is this kind of out of Heavy Rain, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like reconstruct the scene.
Fell. Oh, damn. Nasty stab. Gut right there. Oh, that's pretty awesome. You can move the camera around, see the angles. Came from the kitchen.
I'll be right back.
Yep. Ooh. Oh, man. Oh, damn. He stabbed the shit out of him.
He was stabbed 28 times.
Yeah. Seems like the killer really had it in for him. Chris, I want full analysis on the narcotics.
Consider it done, Lieutenant. Hey, Mike, you finished taking samples there?
Yeah, that's it.
Signs of a struggle. Android sex is officially better. Stop doing that. Oh shit, murder weapon was taken from here. Okay.
Back.
Alright, so I found that the murder weapon was taken from the house.
No. I had to find something to chase this beer down with it. I'm only one bottle down out of the 6. It's fucking grossing me out.
Already terrible.
I feel like I'm on a Fear Factor challenge.
Straight up.
Drink this shitty beer or this tank full of cockroaches.
Oh, shit.
I'll take the cockroaches, Joe.
Ortiz tried to use the glove. I mean the bat, which is cool. Alright, I got his ass. Oh, Deviant took a knife. Oh, he was beating the shit out of it at first. Okay, that's pretty crazy. Deviant was attacked, emotional shocked. He started pounding on it. Oh, and then Deviant grabbed a knife to try to protect itself. Okay, weird. That just changed a lot of information about this. 7 pieces of information. How much shit is there? There you go. got very weird. It's pretty cool how they like trickle the information out. So at first you're like, oh man, this dude just got like fucking stabbed to death. It was terrible. And then you see more shit and you're like, start like piecing together. Maybe it's not exactly the way it first seemed. But like if you had, but like the way they laid out this level makes sense, right? Because if they had put it in a different way, you would have seen all that other stuff first and been like, "Ooh, this is weird." But instead, they laid it out where you had to like, you know, see those things. Not that you had to, but you'll probably see them in that order, and it'll.
I think I figured out what
cover
happened.
it if you follow
Oh,
it
yeah?
and go through more shit.
Shoot, I'm all ears.
It's a pretty good story.
It all started
Oh shit.
in the kitchen.
Fuck.
There are obvious signs of a struggle. The question is,
I thought it
what
did start in the
exactly
kitchen.
happened here?
I think the victim attacked the android with the bat.
That lines up with the evidence. Go on.
The android stabbed the victim.
So the android was trying to defend itself, right? Okay, then what happened?
The victim fled to the living room.
It's not really protecting yourself anymore.
And he tried to get away from the android. Alright, that makes sense.
The android murdered the victim with the knife.
Okay. Your theory's not totally ridiculous. But it doesn't tell us where the android went.
It was damaged by the bat and lost some therium.
Lost some what?
Therium. You call it blue blood.
Oh, shit.
It's the fluid that powers androids' biocomponents. It evaporates after a few hours and becomes invisible to the naked eye.
Oh. But I bet you can still see it, can't you?
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know what that fucking bathroom shit was about, but. Alright, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. That. That's weird.
By the way, Craig,
Yes.
just thought was worth mentioning. Those magazines, every one of them contains 2 different articles, I think.
This way.
Yep.
I'm not
I
sure
read
if you
both.
unlock
There are
both
no
of them.
footprints
Okay.
apart
I read
from
both.
Officer Collins' size 10 shoes.
Well, this happened weeks ago. Tracks could have faded.
No, this type of soil would
What was
retain a
that
trace.
trace? It was like
Nobody's been out here
Android
for a
sex
long
is
time.
better. And then it also said, is your android spying on you?
Yep.
Alright. Got me.
Little jump scare from that.
What?
Little jump scare from the.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, he was in the attic the whole time. So he went with that fucking thing there. After he was bleeding. That's pretty cool.
Hey, what are you doing with that chair?
I'm going to check something.
He's so fucking cool.
Check something.
I'm going to check something.
It's like
The way he talks. is
uber
so-
nerd, yeah.
Yeah, he's just so hilarious sounding. Alright, that was going great. Oh shit. Uh-huh. It's pretty cool. Oh, okay. Man, androids are creepy as fuck. Skittering around like that. It's bleeding like crazy. How's that beer getting any better or worse?
I'm trying to coat my stomach with ice cream. No, I'm gonna crack open the second one. Maybe if I was figuring maybe if I numb my tongue.
Wow. I'd love to switch to a new beer.
I was just defending myself. He was gonna kill me. I'm begging you. Don't tell him.
Connor, what the fuck is going on up there?
Oh no. Hell no, dude. I'm definitely telling on you.
It's here, Lieutenant!
Oh, shit. Chris, Ben, get your asses in here
They
now.
didn't give me the choice. That's interesting. I thought they were gonna
Come on!
shoot. Nice. Alright, made it through. Damn, unlocked a lot of shit on that one. Trophy
Yeah, you
earned.
Easter egg the fuck out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that one just kept popping new blue shit left and right. All right, cool. So now we have officially completed the episode 6 Partners, and now I guess we can start the talk through. Right, we did the walkthrough. Now let's do the talk through of what we just fucking did.
Yeah. So, I think what's probably best served, the best way to approach is to start going through the timeline, and kind of go through the timeline itself as we're watching it.
Yep.
You want to show the numbers?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. So we have the world stats. Let's go with that. All right, so you pop through in front of the bar, and then I enter the bar. Everyone has to. 91% of people scanned all of the customers, which obviously we realized I actually probably only did that because I found him right away, but then it wouldn't work, so I had to scan people. Then I realized that.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it more for trying to figure out what the fuck was wrong. But it was actually cool because you got to read all the little things like, oh, this dude's like a narcotics guy, and this guy was like arrested for DUI, and like you get a little bit of that Watch Dogs mentality of being able to see like he can learn so much shit about people just by seeing them, which was kind of cool world building again, right? To show that they know everything about us, which is probably part of the reason why people hate them, right? Is because they're so omniscient that it makes you feel weak compared to them. So that was kind of interesting.
Yep. So the first part that I think where you have to make a hard choice, you can only pick one of them. Only one of them will unlock is the choice to buy him a drink.
Right.
Chose to be diplomatic. Let me ask you this. As we go through this, because I think this is one, especially with the Connor character.
Yep.
You seem to be approaching him with kind of a, in a way where I am noticing, I think that your mentality is different as Connor than what it would be as CraigMakk. So would CraigMakk have bought him a drink?
No. So partially there. I mean, so again, yeah, my character, the way I'm playing him now is I am playing him clearly as very much an android that knows, quote unquote, it knows where it is, like kind of pigeonholed in society, how people treat it, and that he's kind of trying to be like, hey, what's the like path of least resistance, right? Like I know humanity is like, we had a long conversation, actually. This is a nice little throwback to our last episode. We got real deep into the idea of like, oh, what if in football, right? If you just like brought in all these like androids and took over, and like all these different kind of ways of, there's the way that you could brute force your way to win as an android, but also if your goal is to coexist, if you're, especially I guess in this case, if your programming is to coexist, then what is the path of least resistance? Is it to just like berate him and be like, fuck you have to do this anyway because you're being ordered to do it. Also, I could just lift you up out of the chair and carry you to the car if I wanted to. But like at the end of the day, he was kind of like, hey, can you come do it because kind of you're supposed to? And the guy was like, fuck off. And then I was like, all right, maybe the guy's having a couple drinks. Seems like a kind of thing like he doesn't want to be interrupted. Maybe if I just say, look, I'll buy you a drink. Will you then come with me, please? Like, is that cool? And that's kind of the mentality I had, was like, path of least resistance is, I'm not going to, this guy clearly is not responding to, it's your job and they called you and you have to do it. So maybe just be like, all right, let's have one more beer for the road and then we'll go. And so that's kind of the mentality that I put towards that sequence there.
What would CraigMakk have done?
I mean, honestly, as from the cop side of things, if I was CraigMakk as the police officer, I would have just been like, yo, like this is like, there's a fucking murder. It's your case. You're being summoned to come. Like, stop being, you know, like the understanding is you took this. You know what your job is. Like, you know what the fuck you're here for. There's a murder and we need your fucking help. Like, get up, stop being a drunk, and let's go. Like, it would have been the options were a little bit. There was first I did persist, but then there was one that was more of like, it was confront. And that's, I think I would have been way more like, I would have been confrontational. Like, dude, come on. Like, what are you doing? Get the fuck up. Like, let's just go over because this is your fucking job and you're being a dick. So, like, but it just didn't seem like the way that Connor, especially based on, I think even within, like, the first 5 seconds of hearing him talk, I immediately, like, I think the first thing I said when he talked was like, ha, I love this guy. Like, the way he talks is hilarious. And so, like, I immediately realized, like, he is very much like he's going to be by the book, but he's also going to be he's going to be, I don't want to start shit with people. I kind of want to, what can I do to get the situation resolved in almost like a mediator, right? Like as a mediator, right? Like the idea of how can I split the difference and give you what you need so that you'll come with me and do what you need to do, and I'm not just going to brute force my way through. So that felt like the right one. Is like, come on. And then I actually like the way he did it, because sometimes one of the things that are bad in these games is you read the option on the screen and you choose it, and then the way they interpret playing that out sometimes it doesn't mesh, and that's like one of those biggest, you know, like that Ludo narrative dissonance, that idea of like, oh, I just wanted to say like, come on, man, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden their interaction is like, come on, man, let's fight. And you're like, no, that's not what I thought he meant by come on, man. Like, that's not the option I was clicking. Now you've gone down this weird path where the game has forced my hand only because you didn't give me enough information in the choice to explain what you meant by it. It's
funny you say that.
Yeah.
Because I took that for granted.
Yeah.
Like, but yes, I have encountered that in other video games where it was extremely frustrating.
Yes.
In Telltale games, it's happened.
Absolutely.
And this game did a really good. I actually took that for granted up until you just said that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's like something that this game did very, very well that not every game does, and it was just so seamless that it was just never an issue for me, you know?
Right. You know, so far their descriptions are pretty sparse, but for whatever the reason is, they give you just enough information to actually convey what at least my perception, I can't speak for anyone else, but from my perception of what that sparse description of what he's going to say is, it's like spot on. And like I can give you an example just for anyone out there who cares. Like this is kind of almost just like a backstory kind of Easter egg thing about it. But there have been games, for example, like some of the Bethesda games, like your Fallouts and Skyrims and stuff like that, but mostly Fallouts, where like Fallout games, people have literally made mods. If you buy the game for like the PC, people have made mods where they modded in the choices at the bottom to say word for word exactly what the choice was going to be, because people got so mad when it would say like, it would say one thing and then you'd click on it and then his, like your character's actual, like what the words would say, you were like, no, why is he, like, you made it seem like he was just going to be like, I'm here for you, and then he said something like, why are you being such a punk? And you're like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, why would you say it why would you list it that way? So people literally made mods that made it say, here's the exact words he's going to say, so that you had a better understanding. And so, and I'm only saying that to say that shows how annoyed people get by that kind of you know, kind of disparity between what I think you're saying he's going to say and then what you meant he was going to say. And when it breaks down and it makes my guy look like he's an insane person because he just like went from, I thought I was going down one path and all of a sudden I jumped to another path because you didn't give me enough information. This game has nailed it so far because every time I've responded, it has responded exactly the way that's exactly what I was trying to say. It was perfect. You nailed it. So I like it. So
I thought they wrote this like a story, like a legitimate, I feel like this game was, you make a choice and they write the dialogue as if it was a movie that they're trying to move along and be plausible no matter what you pick.
Right.
If it's not a plausible choice, they won't even list it there.
Right.
So, and maybe, jumping ahead a little bit, maybe that goes to why you didn't have a choice as to telling on him or not. They didn't even like give you an illusion of the choice. Like, look, Connor's going to tell on him. That's his programming.
Right.
If he finds him, he's telling on him.
Right.
And, you know, and maybe it's just also that needs to happen to move the story along.
Right. And also, I mean, I think they were trying to separate the idea of that the guy that we found in the attic, the murderer, he is clearly down the end of the path, right, of being self-aware and being able to, like, I don't want to die, so I protected myself, and so now I'm in this situation. And then I guess they're trying to show you, like, at least at this point in the story where Connor is, yes, he might be starting to see, I mean, that's why it even says right here, software instability is just question marks, so we don't really know where he is on the spectrum, but we know he's at least, regardless of where he is in this game, he is not far enough down the path to be like, yeah, I will sell out humans in order to save an android, right? So it makes sense. That was good. I think it probably would have broken the story if they were like, by the second time you see him, he's already like, fuck it, dude, let's go. Like, I got your back. You know, like you would have been like, well, why even bother playing the rest of this? Because at that point, he's just doing, you know, this is already Blade Runner. He's doing his own fucking thing.
Right.
So,
which is
cool.
But I will say, I can see the difference in between how CraigMakk plays the guy and who CraigMakk thinks the guy is. Right. Because you were like, well, I'm definitely telling on you, you know, but I could sense there was an initial like, oh, fuck, I don't want this guy to get hold on, but Connor's telling on him.
Right. You know? Absolutely. No, like, so the one thing, and although I did say, which I think is kind of telling, because it's cool that they told for me, because I had already been like, yeah, I have to tell on him, specifically because when I saw the actual, like, hey, he was being attacked and he protected himself, that part, I was like, no, this is like, this could theoretically be self-defense. Like, the dude hit you with a bat. Like, that's, you know, that's like the world's, you know, the world's oldest battle is who wins, bat guy versus knife guy, right? Well, we saw knife guy wins pretty hard in this one, but the whole thing was, the thing that actually broke it for me, why I was like, even if Connor goes down a certain path of you know, like kind of deviancy or whatever, reason why you'd have to tell in that case is like, you stabbed that man 28 times. It gets real hard to say that it was only self-defense. Like, even if you want to say, hey, it was a crime of passion, right? If you get attacked by your best friend, and they try to kill you, and then you go crazy and you stab him 28 times to protect yourself, like, yeah, it's understandable why that would happen, but you also need to go to court and prove that situation, because when you stab somebody 28 times, you can't say, hey, I just grabbed the first thing and I threw it at him, and oh my God, it hit him in the side of his neck and he bled out and died, but it wasn't my intent to kill him. Like when you stab somebody 28 times, I was like, Connor's definitely sending your ass at least to lock up, because what you did was so over the top to just even protect yourself, and so it made
It looked
sense
like there was a
to do it.
history of abuse there, and
Right.
when he protected himself, it also brought out the human,
right,
very
yeah.
human emotion of the rage for the vengeance factor.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it may have started out as self-defense, and then it also channeled the vengeance, and that's what maybe took it from, that guy getting rushed to the hospital and surviving the robot defending, the android defending himself, versus him ending up in a morgue.
Right. And you even saw too, I mean, it looked like they did a pretty good job, which I also think is pretty cool. The wireframe, like when you're playing those scenes back, you don't see the people, you just see the kind of wireframe imaging of what he's, perceiving them to do. They did a pretty decent job of showing that like the android looked pretty timid and was just like no please kind of at first. Like I don't
Right.
I don't even really know how to say like what it was about it that gave that off, but it wasn't like that thing was coming at him, he hit it, it went down, it popped back up and came at him like a Terminator, right? It looked like it was more kind of like it was trying to push like the chair towards him to like knock him away, like, kind of get space between it. It got hit, it had its hands up, and then like by the time he finally, like when he really put his hands up and he crushed him over by the kitchen, counter, that's when he finally grabbed the knife. And even the first one, he did the like, the movie swipe. Like it wasn't like he tried to stab him. He just did a swipe and kind of caught him, I think, like in the chest or something. And that's from that point on, you kind of saw him more becoming more Terminator-esque, right? Like the first swipe was almost like it was a protection swipe, and then the second one, he was kind of like, as the guy was stumbling, he kind of just like took another cut at him, and then by the time you see the initial first video that you see when he's in the living room, it's when the dude is like stumbling backwards and he's just stalking him, coming at him like and stabs him in the gut. Like the one that actually looks terrifying is
Right.
the second half of it, but until you see that first half, you realize, oh, like something completely different happened first before we got to this point, which kind of changed the entire way you saw that whole story, which I thought was pretty cool. By the way, I do just want to say one quick thing. I want to take one quick break and say very fast, I'm going to switch over to a second beer because I finished that one. Keeping in the vein of the holidays, this one is Sam Adams. This is their Old Fezziwig Ale. So I don't know if you've ever had this one, but this one is it's in their Christmas, their Christmas set that they have. This one is their it's ale brewed with cinnamon, ginger, and orange peel, and it's 5.9%. So I figured this will be a nice little counterpoint to having that, the kind of caramely, chocolatey porter that I just had, and now having an ale that has a whole bunch of flavors in it. So we'll go from there. I've had this one before. It's good. It's one of those ones you definitely won't have a bunch of, but it's nice to have one as almost like a palate cleanser from something a little heavier and thicker. So I'll try that and go from there.
I will say that now that I've been numbing my tongue with vanilla fudge chip ice cream, and then I'm taking swigs of the Budweiser. Budweiser's much more tolerable.
Nice. So you're saying you
I can
make
barely
like a beer
taste
milkshake out of it?
No, I don't want to mix. You don't mix them because then it'll taste. The ice cream will taste like the. No, I think it's just numb your tongue with the coldness.
Right.
And you can't really taste the beer.
Right. So what you're saying is the ice cream is working as almost like a Novocaine. It is just making it. It's making you only get the benefit of the alcohol without any of the drawback of the horrible fucking taste.
I'm sure it's not going to hit my stomach well.
Perfect.
I don't think this is quality beer.
What you're saying is you basically just turned the Budweiser Copper Lager into drugs, because that is what drugs do for you. Is I don't have to taste it and it just gets me fucked up. So that's what you're doing. You're just like, I just replaced the alcohol part of it and just turned it into a proxy for cocaine, and now I'm just going to get fucked up without having to actually taste the horribleness. Well done.
So gross.
I like the way you did that. All right. So what did you do, by the way? Did you buy him another drink?
I did.
Okay.
And I want to say, I think you nailed it in your articulation of the explanation, path of least resistance, right? Because I would say that Serious Jest encountering this dude in real life is not going to buy him a drink.
Right.
I'm going to say, go fuck yourself.
Right.
You ain't talking to me like that, motherfucker.
Right.
I will drag you across this bar and throw you into the fucking car.
Right.
Right. And that's because I have an ego.
Right.
Right. Maybe you catch me on my best day, and maybe I do buy him a drink. Just say, look, this shit just needs to get done. It's not mine. It's not like I'm paying for it. It's not really my money. The company's going to pay for this drink. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't give a fuck. So whatever. Here's a drink. You happy now? Come on, let's get in the fucking car.
Right.
Right? That's me on my better day where I'm like, you know what? And I would be a better person probably if I always functioned that way.
Right.
Where I don't let my ego get the best of me. Right? And I'm just like, oh, I see what this guy's. It's not about me. This guy hates his life. He's miserable. Right. So, you know, whether or not before I walked in here, he wasn't in a good mood, and then he just got in a bad mood when I walked. He's already a shitty person.
Right.
So, me acting shitty towards him is just going to embolden him to feel more shitty. He's going to double down on it, and it's going to go nowhere. And it's really ultimately not going to make me feel better because now I'm invested in some shit I probably don't even want to get invested in anyway.
Right.
I want to treat him like the little kid that he is to my adultness and keep myself above him. The best way to do that is to be like, hey, you want another beer? I'll buy you another beer. Get in the fucking car. Is that cool?
Right.
Are we cool? You know, that's the best way to handle it.
Right.
And so I guess maybe this is a thing. Maybe you and I going forward sometimes when we get in tough situations like this, when you're on the verge of getting into an argument, maybe channel our inner Connors.
Right.
Go back to, how do I just fucking solve this? Like, do I give a fuck if this person wins the ego battle with me right now? Like,
right.
I just don't even want to get it. I lose as soon as I get into it with him.
Right. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. The loss has already been taken by the fact that you've put yourself in that mindset.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
that's a very good point because, I mean, we also know as two guys who are, you know, pretty far more on the alpha spectrum, right, in terms of even just doing the podcast and, like, the fact that we're willing to, like, go on the internet and do this shit and whatever. Like, there's an element of that is kind of part of the personality that makes us interesting for people to listen to or to have a good time doing this kind of shit, right? But then there's that other part where your ability to recognize. I mean, there's all that conversation, right? As we get super deep again, because we got deep last time too, and I feel like it's going to happen every time on this show because this game just fucking it requires you to get deep if you're going to think about it like in a way that makes sense. But like one of the things is there all of this talk about the failure in humanity is that we all perceive that the world is our stage and we are the main character and everyone else is just bit parts, right? So it's like you walk into this moment with this guy, you're like, oh, he's just my antagonist now. So he is the shitty guy who's trying to fucking, bring me down, and he's going to be the guy that at the end of the day I have to triumph over to prove that this is my movie and it's about me. So I have to be a dick to him because if I don't, then the bad guys can't win. That's not good for my movie, right? Whereas like when we can all start to realize that like everyone is perceiving, every single person that we come through or come across is perceiving the world the exact same way. So to them, their moment is important to them and their perception of themselves is most important, and they're not really worried about what you're going to say back to them. It's then, oh, well, if I don't say some shit back to them, if other people, quote unquote, are watching this movie, they're going to think I'm a pussy. So I have to then respond in kind. So now it becomes, like you said, it's a double down, right? Because then you get caught up in this thing where most situations we don't really care so much about what we do. It's we care about if other people were watching it, what would they think about us, right? And that's the issue. That's why we get ego, right? Because ego comes down to it's if all you ever worried about was yourself, that you could say, fuck this guy, I'm never going to see this guy again. If I just tell him like, hey dude, don't worry about it, like let me get you a beer, even if I don't like this guy even, if you could think that way, then you would do it. The issue comes down to the fact that we all automatically assume, oh man, but if like other people are watching this movie, then I become the pussy of the movie, and then I'm the guy that gets relegated to like 14 pages down the fucking, the credits that somebody says, nerd guy, CraigMakk, right? Like I don't want to be fucking nerd guy. I want to be fucking the star, character. So like that's why we all fucking respond with ego, because we can't always imagine ourselves as being kind of a bit player in somebody else's life, not necessarily the star of our own, life. And so you're right. This would be a good way to move forward, is saying, how, like, I guess what would Connor do, right? What would Connor do? How would he handle this? Like, what is the best way to kind of minimize
There's a Ready Player
conflict?
2 T-shirt.
Exactly.
What would Connor do?
Yeah, WWCD. I'll buy one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, like, what's the way that minimizes conflict, advances the situation, doesn't make me feel like a piece of shit later? Because almost always, what do? We feel like pieces of shit after the fact anyway, right? No one ever feels like, fuck that guy, because you're always just like, oh, I fucking did it again, right? It's like, I acted stupid again. The fuck is wrong with me? So it's like, it is an exercise in learning about
restraint.
Obviously, it's restraint of these androids, because we've said already the fact that they can do anything but are put in positions where they most certainly can't exercise that power. How do they circumvent that and learn how to exist in this reality, right? And in reality, they end up probably being the best of us, because they're able to, even if it's programmed in restraint, that restraint ends up making them be, like, taking the good parts of humanity and not the shittiest parts, which are just like fucking unbridled rage and ego and shit that we can't fucking control. So, cool.
So,
so
talking about moving the story along
of that, yeah.
Yeah, I think most people, so most people, I think, channeled their inner Connor.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that is, maybe humanity mostly understands this concept.
Right.
But our ego is just too strong. We're like, nah, I got to go to jail today.
I'm gonna break this bottle on this man's head today, son.
All right, so let's advance to
All right, Connor and Hank
see what
arrive
other
at the scene.
choices
So
we
this is where I started clearing the blues up pretty nicely.
Yeah, so I don't think you did have a choice. I think you had to get out of that car.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear.
Yes.
You weren't going to sit in there long enough.
Yeah.
Now, on mine, too, let's see. I've got everything cleared except whatever's under check shower. So you missed something there, too.
Yep.
I investigated the writing. I investigated
under check shower
or examined
analyze knife. No, because I did the check shower, and because check shower leads to examine statue. I did that. It's under
I did that
knife,
too.
There are three things that spiral that I didn't do those three, so I don't know what you were supposed to do with that.
Well, there's only one. It looks like you didn't get from under that, right?
Under analyze knife, there's one. Then one shoots off of that. Then one shoots. off
right,
of that.
one shoot,
So
right. Yeah. So that whole little, that whole area, I missed that too. So we didn't do something with the knife that we could have done.
I like how 99% of people did almost everything, which is funny because I'm like, who's the 1% douchebag who played this that just walked in and was like, fuck it, walked back outside and was like, okay. I'm just going to tell him, here's what I think happened. I'm just going to make up some bullshit story because I want to go back. I want to go back home. I'm tired of this bullshit. It's pretty great.
So it looks like the one thing you found that I didn't was investigate writing. Wait, I did examine the statute, so I got that in this. See how it says read backyard. Android spy? What is it? Analyze backyard. I didn't analyze the backyard.
Didn't analyze the backyard? Okay.
Yeah, I do remember like realizing that he was still in the house, but I didn't analyze the backyard.
Right, okay, so I went out there and that's when I found out that, they were like, yeah, there's no footprints in the last like 3 weeks, so he has to be still in the
All right, so while we're still on the screen, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to try to grab these articles out of the other screen, so we can talk about Android sex and Android spy. But you talked about the storytelling in this and how you liked it, as far as how they chose to reveal the different clues in the situation you were walking into. So you like the order of the reveal, the jump scare got you. Were you feeling tension in the attic? Did you feel any kind of actual, like, a lot of time in those kind of scenes, I think they were going for that scare.
Yeah.
Did you feel that scary feeling?
I didn't get, it wasn't like scary per se. It was like, I was more interested in, like, I was trying to figure out what was going to happen, like like it was apprehension or like excitement to see what was going to happen, but I wasn't like tense or nervous like it was like a like a Resident Evil type thing where you're like, oh shit, something's going to jump out at me or anything like that.
Why do you think that is?
I think I don't really know. And here's the thing that I can say that is actually I just thought of this now because I didn't realize this while I was playing it. One of the reasons why you would think inherently this game there should have been more tension is because you do know like David Cage's games, he's willing to say when there's multiple characters that are main characters, you might kill one of them off and then they're just gone from the game. So there is like there's a built-in level of tension that you should feel because you don't. It's not like it's just like oh man, I got scared, game over, now let's restart and do it over again. It would actually be like, oh shit, Connor's dead. But I just think the way that scene played out, and I think just knowing that he was injured, I think I just was more like, I'm probably just going to either find him real fucked up, or he will have gotten, he went out through a, like I'll find out that he like got a hole out through the roof and he went out the house, and I'm going to keep looking for him, right? So I wasn't necessarily worried that he was going to come out and attack me. Also because once I had seen the other scene and known that it wasn't just like this android on like a murderous rampage, like once I saw the back, like, oh, that he had been attacked and was defending himself, I was just more like, well, it's probably not a reason why he would just jump out and like defend himself to kill me. He would probably just like, kind of what we saw he would do. Like he would, I thought he would be hurt and be like either fucked up or or he had died or whatever, or he would have been just fucked up and been like, oh man, like help me, or he would have escaped. So I don't necessarily know if they were going so much for the scare. I mean, like the first big scare didn't get me. The one where he like moves in and there was the like mannequin body thing or the punching bag body thing. Like that was almost more just, I was like, this is too obvious that he's not just like, unless this android's just a complete moron, he's not just going to be standing there with a light shining on him so that you get the perfect shadow of him like right there. Either that, or I was like, or he'll be dead. It'll be like deactivated there, so it wasn't really scary. But I thought it was cool because it created like a element of interest in like, what am I going to find, right? Like, am I going to find him dead, or am I going to find him alive, or is he going to have escaped, right? And it's going to be continuous chase.
Yeah, and for me, those are valid points as well. I think the biggest one for me, and I think it maybe had to do with how my story played out a little differently. Remember that when I played the demo through, I had the same ending that you did for the first mission, which was Connor like kind of tricked the android into giving the girl up, and then the android got shot. This storyline, the one I played that went actually into when I actually played the full game, I ended up sacrificing myself for the girl. So he took a fall off the building and was like cool with it. And then you see him come back for this mission, right? So they just rebuilt him or like, fixed him up eventually. So like to me, the risk of Connor dying isn't really that great. I kind of see him as this thing that can be repaired or just, whatever. So, at this point in the story, I was just like, because it's Connor. If it was a human going through, I think maybe it would have changed the dynamics a lot more. But it's like, watching Superman, head into a burning building, you're just like, all right, whatever, he'll be all right. Right. So.
Right, that makes sense.
Getting to one of these articles that you picked up and partially read, the title is Your Android Spying on You? Right. And the description was CyberLife could be using its androids to collect private information. And then, let's see here. It says, oh, by the way, there's like a reference back to that other article we had read in a previous one. It says zero gravity subway to connect NYC and DC in 45 minutes. So we already talked about that in an earlier episode. Yep. So yeah, go back to one of our earlier episodes for that discussion. But this is just like an added. Like Cool. And then so it says more and more experts are suggesting that CyberLife uses 120 million androids to record details of private conversations of its customers and sell them to trading partners. Ever talked about buying that new car while eating dinner with your partner? CyberLife could use that information for targeted advertising. The information goldmine doesn't stop there. Everything from personal indiscretions to political affiliations could be easily extracted and potentially used for nefarious purposes. The spate of reports linking Warren's presidency to CyberLife only deepens such concerns. Several consumer rights organizations have requested that CyberLife disclose the information it gathers and who it sells that information to, but the company has always refused. Requests for a formal inquiry have gone unanswered so far. So we have seen this topic
like Alexa and all that shit.
Well, yes, we've seen it in real life as well as it's been used in a few major stories now that have gotten around. Like, this was a big issue in House of Cards.
Right.
where they were yeah, they had tricked people. Like there was a disaster, and as part of the disaster relief efforts, they were asking people to download this app to the phone. But then part of like the EULA, the end user license agreement, and the privacy thing, a lot said that you're consenting to them collecting your data. A lot of us sign these things without reading them.
Oh, we never read
You
them.
indicate I
Not
agree.
a lot of us.
Yeah.
Almost everyone does. No one reads
Well,
them.
yeah, I actually do read them unless I'm in a real rush. But I also work in this area of privacy, so so definitely this is a lot of times you download these apps and these companies have been taking advantage of the long boilerplate language to basically allow you to consent them to do to monitor, like even access your phone's camera and your audio without your specific permission every time, right? Which is really, really scary. So we've seen it like in House of Cards where they were using that to like try to sway elections, and then in real life, right? The Alexa with Facebook and stuff like that. All of those, there's been a bunch of watchdog agencies that are kind of cracking down on what kind of stuff these big companies are collecting. Right. And if you Google this, if you just Google, is my phone spying on me right now? Like they've done like experiments, like people have described, like there's several like real journalists who have like said like, hey, you know what? I started talking about buying a new car in the presence of my phone when I had no apps open or anything, and all of a sudden I started seeing advertisements for a new car start popping up in all my feeds on my social media and all any websites I access and stuff like that. So it's a scary time. Yeah. This relates back to
that's fucked up.
To real stuff. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add at this point. I mean, other than that's fucked up, because that's kind of how I feel too.
Right. It is. It's one of those things where you we just feel that we have abdicated the throne on a lot of our privacy concerns, right? I mean, a lot like our generation is not great at it. The next generation behind us is terrible at it. They will give away freely every bit of information there is willingly, right? So we're almost getting to this point where these things like spying on you stuff is getting less and less necessary because future generations just willing to post everything out there. They're just like, yeah, whatever, man, here's everything. I'll give you access to everything. You don't need to take it from me. It's just there. But it's scary because, there are these stories about, these like these personal assistants that you can have. I mean, we know the idea that they have to be listening all the time to be able to respond immediately to their wake words. They have to be listening to everything else that you say to know when you said the word that kind of activates them, right? So these are these things where we more and more realize, like an android in this world is analogous to all of these, the Google Assistants and your Facebook portals and your, the.
You said you're an Alexa fan. Your family has a bunch of them, right?
Yes,
throughout the house.
We do, yes.
And so we touched on so how do you don't worry that this thing's listening to your family all the time?
I do. So so I don't there's my thought is. There is some worry about it. If we are ever going to have a conversation where I'm actively worried about it being picked up for something, I mean, I could mute it or unplug it. I would literally, I've done that before, honestly, in situations where we're having serious conversations about things where I'm just I just don't want it to accidentally pick up or hear a person's name and think that I said to call that person, right? And then all of a sudden they're hearing a phone call or something like that. But that I do similar in the same way that we've all done this. Once we got away from flip phones from 20 years ago or whatever, we've all done moments where you've started having a conversation about a specific thing or something angry about work or about a specific person, and then all of a sudden you get this weird tingle and you pull out your phone and make sure you didn't accidentally butt dial them so they can hear what you're saying or something like that.
I only use burner phones for anything. So.
Right, exactly. I have treated it in that same mentality. But part of it is very much the idea of the freedom and the power that it gives me to be able to just ask a question and know immediately the answer, is something that I have been willing to kind of give up on. And so I think there's a comfort level of you don't necessarily need to have them in your bathroom, or you don't need to have them in your in like certain situations like where you need to know, hey, I'm gonna have a serious, I'm gonna have a serious conversation, or I'm gonna have an intimate moment. Like, you can unplug it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think there's nothing wrong with doing that.
I mean, are you doing that though? Are you religiously doing that, or have there been conversations you've had like, yeah, I didn't even think about it. I was kind of in the moment.
Absolutely,
lazy.
and I think that's the problem with having, like, once you get multiple ones of them, then you become less and less, sensitized to thinking about it, because as they disseminate throughout your house, it's not like when I only had one, right? I was just like, well, yes, anything in this room where the android is, I'm going to be super serious, or I'm going to be very like concerned with conversations that I'm having or moments that take place in that room or whatever, right? Because that's the room where your fucking listening device is. Once you get to the point where you have one in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms in your house or something like that, then it just becomes a blanket of, it's like Wi-Fi, right? It's fucking everywhere. And so at that point, unless you have to do one of two things, right? If you are that nervous about everything in it, where you would be walking around like I'm walking through from room to room and unplugging them and plugging them in as I walk out and everything like that, then just get rid of them. Like, then you're somebody who doesn't want them, right? Like, so you kind of can't be both, and that's where I am a person who has given up a degree of that privacy for a degree of that simplicity or ease of use or whatever, right? But I always have it aware in my mind of like, hey, if there's like my kids are going to have like a conversation or they're talking about whatever, I'll unplug something, because I don't necessarily think that's something that needs to be accidentally picked up for anything, right? Even if it's not nefariously, right? Like, even if it's like by mistake, it picks it up. And like that story that we talked about on an earlier episode where there was that lady and her husband who were having a conversation talking about, it was something dumb, but they were talking about like getting wood floors in their house or something, and then all of a sudden they got a call from a random contact in their phone that said, were you just talking about putting in wood floors? And she was freaked out, and it was like, yeah, no, your Alexa recorded that conversation, and then it sent that conversation to me, like it just recorded it and forwarded it out to me. And so I just got a recording.
I don't remember this talk. That's fucking crazy. That's super creepy.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff you do have to worry about, is like the things, like, I mean, honestly, for me, I probably at the end of the day, and this could be super naive, and I'm not sure. I mean, I have to come to grips with this on my own. I am probably more worried about the accidental misuse of shit, like accidentally calling someone that I don't want to, or accidentally sending a message, or accidentally having my kids buy something that I don't want them to, or something like that, than I am about like a company like Amazon just gathering all this data through what I'm just saying. Because to parse through billions and billions and billions of gigabytes of data of just my voice all day long, and then multiply that times the millions of people that own these things, they're like, we could just do that so much easier from your phone. Like, you have your Amazon app on your phone, we could just parse out data that we're trying to sell you stuff through your phone app. It's not even like functionally worth it for us to do it through your voice talking, because the information would be, there's just too much information for us to parse through and figure out, and it would be trillions of gigabytes of data for them to be able to figure it out. So like, I'm way more worried about the like accidental fuck ups, right? Now, there's a reason why I also don't own like anything from Facebook, because I just don't trust those motherfuckers for shit. Like, I think they are actively data mining in every possible,
You don't think Jeff Bezos is data mining?
But
have you seen the season South Park?
Yes. But I guess
he's an evil human being.
But my point on the Amazon thing is that Amazon is much more doing
it
on like.
I said something bad about Jeff Bezos, and stuff in my house started randomly shutting down. God damn it!
Right. See, I think they're just trying to get to the point where they just want to take over to be able to sell you everything, right? Like, so they're treating you as just as a consumer, and so they're trying to data mine for like what kind of stuff do you want to buy and that kind of stuff, right? Facebook, it wants to know everything about your life so that they can figure out what other companies they can, because they're not selling you the stuff. They are trying to figure out, we want to know every single thing about you so that we can figure out who we can sell your information to, which is just inherently
could be like politically too.
Right, it could be about your politics. It could be about your sexual identity. It could be about your, are you more friends with guys or more friends with girls? Are you this or that? Like, all those things. Amazon is much more just like, do you like fucking toilet paper? Cool, we can sell that to you. Like, now again, is that naive? It probably is naive.
Yeah, it might be naive. Yeah. Because if you think that these companies gather this information and only use it for their own purposes and don't possibly have like resales and stuff like that, I don't know.
Of course, but at least if nothing else, Amazon has been way more upfront about how they use and reuse your information, whereas Facebook has intentionally been like, like they've obfuscated their decisions from the very beginning, because their whole thing was always like, we're just here to like let you, share pictures, and like they have intentionally gone out of their way to not share information about what they do with their stuff until this year, when all of a sudden everything blew up in their face. And then it came out even after they told us that they weren't going to do it. We found out that like the story came out that they talked about how they could potentially resell your information and everything like that too. So it's like they're just like, yes, could it be naive that other companies aren't doing it? Absolutely. But we know that they're shitty at it, right? We know that they're doing it. The other ones, we just think they are because they're companies. And of course, the dystopian future tells us, of course, there's going to be 4 companies left at the end of our lives, and they're going to run every country in the world, and Amazon will clearly be one of them. But like right now, I don't have the proof that they're doing it, whereas like Facebook, I know for a fact they are. So it makes it a lot easier for me to not trust them for shit.
Just makes you feel better about that.
Yeah, and at some point you have to trust something, right? I mean, you can't, like, I'm not willing to go off the grid. Like, I mean, if I was, it'd be great. It'd be much easier if I could completely go off the grid and be like, yo, I don't even use a smartphone. Like, I don't use anything. I have no social media presence. Like, if I was willing to do that, then it'd be super easy to say, fuck all these companies.
Oh, you have a social media president right now, whether you like it or not. I also have a social media
president. Yes, I definitely do. So I can't get away from that no matter what.
But yeah, no, and you raise a good point because, by the way, my wife like insisted on we got one of these Echo Show things,
right?
Kind of free with another order that I placed on Amazon, and so I was gonna give it away, and my wife was like, no, I want that thing because I can use it to call up recipes and have it in the kitchen, and then And I'm like, yeah, we have a tablet that you could have just, put the recipe on the tablet and the same thing. But now, so this thing is sitting in my kitchen, and I don't know. I don't know how much, like, I use her to fuck around where I'm like, Alexa, tell me about, the beef between Drake and Kanye West. And she's like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, you don't know shit, Alexa. And then I just, like, verbally berate her for the next 20 minutes while she says, I'm sorry, or, please report feedback to my customer service, or whatever. She's very tolerant of my outbursts.
Right. She's like Connor, is what you're saying.
Yeah. She's like, that's cool. Just get it all out. I don't give a fuck.
She's like, would you like me to buy you a beer for the road?
Yeah. Then I would like her. Then I would actually like her. You'd see my. I would go from hostile to neutral again. But. But now this bitch is sitting in my wife was like, I'll turn it off when I'm not using it, and she never turns it off. It's sitting in my kitchen all the time listening. It's probably listening. It got me real. I had to teach her a few things because I asked her. I was like, like what's the best podcast in the world? And she's like, go scrolling through a list of podcasts. Like, no, wrong answer.
Right, there's one correct answer, bitch.
One correct answer. It's live from the man cave. That's it. By the way, then I'll use this time if you're listening to the show and you've heard us talk all this shit and you're like, man, I wish I could listen to these guys talk shit for like a bunch more hours. Well, look, there's hours and hours and hours worth of podcasts, and you can find it. Our podcast is on pretty much any podcast app, right? I don't think we're on Spotify though, but we're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on that good stuff, Podcast Addict. This is the name of the podcast. I'm putting it in the chat right now. It's live from the Man Cave. You could also go directly to www.livemancave.com, and you can you can download our podcast there. You can check out our movie reviews there. You can join our Discord server. We're on Discord, and then you could talk about shit that we said during the show, get your input in, etc., etc. There's another article, Mac, that you read through that you got the title. I'll address it now. Android Sex Officially Better. Is the name of that out of Gossips Weekly. Sorry, ladies, but plastic can't be beat. And let's see. The article is basically saying the results. It's a survey result. Yeah, 68% of men prefer sex with an android to a real woman. And with 52% of men saying they've tried the experience at least once, that's a lot of androids love to go around. So there were very few reasons given for the preference, but we think we know the real reason. Androids don't want to talk about their feelings afterwards. The story was sponsored by, yeah. But the story was sponsored by Eden Club. Discretion is our middle name, and if you remember in the story that you just went to as you were going through the house, you picked up a card from Eden Club. So it ties into the story a little bit. And that's it. That's all it said about that. I can imagine, and Android Sex being that you don't have to. You could take the element of just basically doing whatever you want and not worrying about how it's going to ultimately affect a relationship.
It's taking,
I don't know.
It's taking prostitution to the next level, right?
Yes.
It's removing a lot of the inhibitions and the the risk, not the risk of obviously you're removing even the risk part from the prostitution part of the actual health risk for yourself, and you're taking out all of the risk of oh, am I going to have to deal with this person later? Are they going to come back later and all of a sudden be in love or whatever, this kind of stuff? Or am I going to get feelings when it's you're kind of combining pornography, pornography is created as the ideal version of sex for us, right? Like a guy or a girl can visualize this as being this version of sex that is not attainable and can kind of use that to achieve a visual stimulation, right? Then you have prostitution, which is now it's a real person involved, but taking out all the emotion and all that kind of stuff and making it just be this person that I literally it's a transaction of I give you money, you allow me to have sex, and then that's the end of that, right? So I don't have to worry about it, coming back to quote unquote bite me later. Now you take those two things and combine them together and have this idealized version of sex combined with lack of risk of anything, in terms of emotional attachment, physical, issues, anything like that. It 100% makes sense why that would become appealing to people. Because there are people that end up getting hooked on either pornography or prostitution more than actual regular, intimate relationships, just because of the rush that it gives them that the other one, that they don't get from their whatever, their other, the kind of traditional relationship sex. So it would make sense why, if you just had an android, you could clearly understand why people could get hooked on that and say it's almost basically perfect in every single way.
Yeah, and I would say, so are you for or against, but now we're talking real world here, for or against prostitution being legal?
Oh, I mean, I don't see why I think actually it makes sense to be legal and just be controlled, because the only real drawback to it, I mean, all things being considered, obviously there's people using prostitution as a way to dip out on their on their significant others and stuff. That's its own thing. That's personal things that people have to figure out on their own. But the only actual real unequivocal drawback to prostitution is that it is not monitored for health reasons. And so
that's a huge drawback, right?
Yeah. So if you controlled it and legalized it, then to be able to say, okay, now it's just a literal job where you have health, benefits and regular checkups, and you check in, every week or month or whatever, make sure everything's good. It would just be better across the board for everyone. And to say that somebody shouldn't be able to make the decision, also then you would get rid of a lot of the situations of people being used, sex trafficking and shit, where people are sold into prostitution and all that. Because if it's controlled, it all of that stuff goes out the window. So now you've removed the risk to the actual prostitute themselves. You've removed the risk to both parties of sexual or of health risk, because people have to go through checks to make sure they're healthy. Everything else should just be a consensual decision that shouldn't be an issue to anyone else other than super religious people that are just being shitty and want to insert themselves in other people's lives for no reason. Once we can kick those motherfuckers out and just say, do what you want to do. If you can't find somebody, but there's this person who's perfectly willing to take money from you to fulfill that need for you, do what you want to do. That seems totally fine, and it would protect everyone better.
It's such a weird dynamic that we're living in a society where people are enough is enough. We're not going to have government or men control women's bodies and tell them what to do with their bodies, But this is one area where they clearly are they're hey, this is my body. If I want to have sex with this person and charge money for it, I should be allowed to. No, right. You won't do that. I've decided you will not do that. Right. Except that, like you said, I think the thing that continues to kind of keep the negatives, the stigma that keeps it illegal, I think at this point, are that it is also widely used to exploit women. But what
Absolutely.
I think that a really discerning mind is going to think, like you just expressed, is that a lot of the trafficking and the spread of diseases and the hurt against women come from this having to happen in a back, like with abortions, right? Abortions were horrible when they were illegal because they were, it was like coat hangers in a dark alley and it was sterilized. It was horrible, right? So if you remove it, and then if you go out and you get a hooker and you realize, you go to get a hooker and then you realize you can ask her, like, are you licensed? Are you are you all your tests up to date? Are you bonded? Or, whatever it is that they need to do, and they get a union, they all of that shit.
And separate from that, then they would also know that you were tested and that you were safe, so that the prostitute wouldn't have to worry about like some asshole coming in who's just like, fuck it, I have like HIV or herpes or whatever, and I'm just doing this because I get a thrill from fucking with people and ruining their lives because I'm miserable. So it's like it would protect both parties by bringing it out of the shadows and say, look, let's be honest, sex is natural and it's normal. People are doing it all the time anyway. To say that it shouldn't be something that willing participants should be able to consensually come into agreement with, and then decide that they want to do it, and even if that involves an exchange of money, right? If it's a service that I'm providing, like, look, I'm fucking really good at sex, like, I'm gonna do it for you, we're good, no problem, problem solved, I'll take my money and then call it a day. It just seems it's such an archaic way of thinking about it, especially, which is so insane because it is like widely known even by the Bible itself. It is the oldest profession, right? The most fucking the most religious you can possibly be is the actual Bible. I mean, at least of Christianity version of the most religious you can be is to read from the Bible, and it is the oldest religion oldest profession in that book. So to say it's this thing that we know has been around forever, but for some reason we're still just being dicks about it, is like, it just doesn't make, no pun intended, being dicks about it, but like we're just not allowing it. It's so dumb. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely agreed. So I think if they made it where it was androids, now removing this, the theme that'll come up later as to whether androids are alive, but if you had like a definitely not alive robot that gave you all the realistic sensation of a sexual encounter, again, not being able to really replicate the human connection, etc., or whatever. But if you wanted to pay for that, then now you don't have to worry about some poor woman being exploited. You don't have to worry about disease spread. You don't have to worry about a host of other things. I can see why. Right.
Essentially, be like sex dolls that move and react to you, and kind of emulate the connection of a human contact without actually having it be human contact.
Right. So anyway, so that's it for that article. Let's jump back to so it looks like we discovered most of the stuff here the same. Read Android Spy, and it looks like three choices or three possible continuations materialize. One of them looks like it goes all the way from the knife, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they all look like they all.
Or analyzing the blood on the wall.
It looks like if we had no, because it definitely says analyze knife leads to the next one, which leads to the next one, which leads to the next one. So the only way you can do those three is basically we probably had to do something with the knife that would give us the option to do the next thing, which would give us the option to do the third thing, which would give us the option to do the fourth thing. But you can only do those things in sequential order because it's not like, because some of these you'll see they all kind of shoot off of multiple things, so it give you different kind of butterfly effects. This is an effect that comes off of that one thing that we clearly did not do, whatever that thing is.
Okay. So. Yeah, and I don't even know what that would be. I mean, looking back on it, but let's not dwell on that. The one we did chose, I thought we both went down the same path, which is Connor knows what happened. 98% of people ended up there.
Yeah. Yep.
Where Connor's not a complete idiot and figured out what happened.
Yep. 98% of people reported to Lieutenant Anderson.
Yep.
And 95% of those people reconstructed the crime perfectly. So basically, looks like, or at least
that's what I did as well. Yeah, reconstructed the crime, and then follow the blue blood to the attic, right?
Yep. Searched the attic and then found deviant.
Searched, and then that was the end of it.
Right. Now,
Um,
so I'm trying to look and see.
what's that?
I was trying
So
to see.
there was an alternate ending, I guess, where the deviant didn't get found. But once you
Right.
found him, there's no option of not telling them. So I think that was, like we said, it's crucial to the story to tell them if we found
Right.
him. And
Oh,
Connor is not at the point.
So under reconstruct the crime, there's the option to not reconstruct the crime, I guess, or an alternative to that, which then leads to another thing that we could have done that also comes off of those other options that we didn't choose, like the things, the 4 things that we didn't do from analyzing the knife. It leads to a 5th thing that also comes off of either Connor knows what happened, the alternative to that, which is, so I guess if Connor doesn't know what happens, or if Connor does not reconstruct the crime, either one of those 2 things. So he either, so you can know what happens, report to Lieutenant Anderson, and then get it wrong when you reconstruct the crime with him, or Connor doesn't know what happens, and then it immediately leads to this thing. So there's this other option, which I guess that is the option of not finding the deviant, because you never go and look in the attic at all. Like, you just don't find out about the attic because you didn't reconstruct the crime correctly to even find that the ladder was knocked down. Probably that's I'm assuming. I mean, I'm just extrapolating, but it's probably like you don't even get that prompt where he sees there's no ladder and knows to go get the chair to go up into the attic because he doesn't know about the attic.
Right. All right. So let me ask you this now, because you commented this. You commented a little bit on this before. You used the words self-defense and sort of like going through. So I guess there's that element where this android was getting abused for a while, and I feel like I must point out that this is like the abortion debate, right? Where you kind of really can't come to a conclusive legal, or this is my opinion of it, even the Supreme Court has said differently in a way that I didn't think makes sense, but I don't think you can make a decision on whether abortion is murder or whether it's somebody just taking cells out of their body that are not alive without deciding when life begins, right? Unless you're just going to say, hey, even if it's alive, I don't care, the mother can still kill it while it's alive in her body, which is another route to take care of. So anyway, let's not go down, let's stick on it can't be self-defense, right, necessarily, if the android's not alive. I think they're still going to treat it the same way, right? It becomes like that animal, that the animal gets attacked, it turns around and bites somebody, and then the decision becomes not so much do we need to punish this animal for its actions, it becomes more like, can we allow this animal now to continue to exist in society? It's bitten somebody, it's drawn blood, it's always going to be dangerous now.
Right.
And that's the thing with the android, especially in the way that it reacted with 28 stab wounds or whatever to the body. It's like it went beyond, like that rage built up from the constant abuse. Right. So I don't know, like did this evoke any kind of feelings on your end, like, justice-wise? Like, did you think, like, well, even if this guy was an abusive asshole, ultimately it's still a human being that the android killed, and this android needs to get put down, or whatever?
So there's a couple things. So first thing I do want to just say, only because I just want to self-correct, just because I zoomed in on the screen and I noticed that path at the bottom that we didn't pick does not come from Analyzed Knife. It's shot through Analyzed Knife. If you
from crime scene.
It's right out of crime scene. So there's something at the crime scene.
Something we missed.
Find it all. Yeah, something that we altogether missed. But it wasn't one of those 10 things that you had to find, because remember, we both checked off the 10 things it listed. So so interesting. That'd be interesting to find out what was at the crime scene that we did not find. But I guess we'll figure that out. But anyway, so here's the thing, right? There's a couple ways that I look at that. On one hand, you have the circumstance of like so the android kind of walks this, it's this line in the middle, right? Because on one hand you have a situation where there could be a dog that you could abuse the shit out of your dog. Like, you could treat your dog like shit. And then if your dog goes crazy and mauls you or somebody else in your family, it's kind of a standard thing where that dog has to be killed, right? Because it's like it mauled and attacked somebody. If it killed them, or even if it just mauls them and like really fucks them up, we just kill them. We don't say like, but like he treated them like shit and it's fucked up. We just look at it and say, well, like, it's a fucking dog and it's not a person, so Yes, we say it's not smart enough to know, and we can't teach it and sit it down and say, well, here's the thing, what you did wrong, Fido. But in reality, it's just because we walk into that situation already having put like we have cataloged life and said animals fall far below like people. So if it comes down
Right.
to one or the other, the dog gots to go, right? So that's like one thing where it almost doesn't matter that like it doesn't matter if even if you say that the android isn't alive, because if that continues to hold, like that idea, the way we treat like living things already on this planet right now holds in the future when androids come about, we will still just say, oh, I don't care. Like you just don't chart high enough to give us to matter as much to us as a person does. So you have to get put down, right? So like on the other hand, when you look at it from the point of view of a like now if we separate out the living part of it, the living part doesn't matter, right? Because alive is based on this game. Alive is a debatable concept. That part is it's
Right.
very fluid and not necessarily it's not about you have blood and like tissue and organs, or like even like a brain that is organic. It's it becomes more into the idea of like, I guess, like you've talked about, like the idea of like a soul, or just like a higher purpose of cognitive ability, right? So now we look at an android and say, okay, well, functionally in every conceivable way, they function on the same level in terms of decision making, thought process, whatever, in the same way as a human being. Because if you wanted to make the argument, well, like, oh, but they're not as, like intelligent or whatever as we might be, well, then you would make the argument and say, well, then you should just be able to throw a baby out the window because you're like, oh, it's fucking dumb. So like, it's not smart enough to make decisions, so it doesn't have like emotion. It just like literally in the first 3 months they have no emotion whatsoever. It's just they eat, sleep, and shit themselves, right? So if you just want to make the argument that the thing that defines life is if it's its like ability to reason and think and have emotion and feel fear of death and things like that, like that that would allow you to just say like, yeah, we can murder babies for the first 6 months easily. The first 3 years probably it may be a little bit more debatable, but definitely within the first 3 months or 6 months, because there's nothing there behind the eyes. So what it comes down to is the idea of we just pick and choose this kind of binary decision on what allows you to say that the differentiation between a human being and in this case like an android is just that like we're just people and you're not. So it's another thing that allows us to separate ourselves and not feel bad about it. But in this game, when it shows that they start to like think beyond the programming, or the straight up just kind of like what is hardwired in, which is already bigger than what most people are able to do, right? Because most of us live our lives in the programming of our parents, right? We're just like we
Yeah.
are extensions of our parents with slight deviations, and it's like our programming is very similar to the way our genetic makeup is. Like we are 98% our parents, and then we're the 2% that kind of differentiates us and allows us to create more people that are slightly different and kind of keep the continuation of the race. Our thinking is the same way. We are 98% our parents in most major ways, or at least what our parents have made of us, right? What they have taught us, even if it's to learn the exact opposite of what they did. Like your parents treated you like shit, so now you're a better person, or your parents treated you great, and now you're a shitty person because you were spoiled by them. Like even if those two cases are the same, they are just extensions of what came before us. In many ways, these androids are just extensions of the programming that is built into them. So when they are able to break away from the programming in a way that even most people aren't able to do, it seems insane to me to be able to say that you would just say like this thing, well, yeah, I mean that guy is clearly wrong, but like he's still a person and you're just an android, so we need to put you down. It was clearly evident that it was abuse that had been happening for quite some time, and probably finally whatever it was, even if it was trauma, right? Just like in the same way that human beings crack under trauma, if the android cracked under the trauma of this abuse and finally said, fuck off, enough's enough, like why am I letting this happen? It seems crazy that we would just out of hand say we're just going to dismiss it as you need to be put down because because you're not a human being, because that just seems like it just seems like a very specific thing that we're choosing to be the delineation between what gets rights or what gets protection and what doesn't.
What is the last thing you remember in the Kara storyline when they were in that house in Detroit?
The last part I remember would be the situation where I went upstairs, cleaned his like bathroom and shit like that, all his bathrooms and all that, and fuck, wait, how did it end after that? I know I cleaned everything downstairs. I went upstairs, cleaned up there. I met the little girl. He yelled at the little girl. He treated her like shit and then hugged her. And I think that's the last thing I remember. Like he was like, "I'm sorry, I'm an asshole."
Okay.
I think that's the last thing I remember. Am I forgetting something?
I think you're right.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out where we are in the storyline. Where, I mean, they address these kind of issues of like when androids are in tough situations like that, where their programming is in conflict with something else in their programming or in what they're observing. And it's like you saw a little bit of it where like Connor was like, "Fuck, I'm supposed to sit in the car, but then I also have these other orders, so now I got to resolve them."
Right.
And he made a choice.
Right.
So he had to kind of run with the script. So I think when we go back to the Kara storyline, you noticed this like point in where the android kind of broke with protocol, because you pointed it out, and there's a good illustration of that somewhere else that we'll encounter down the line.
Nice.
Of what that moment looks like. So let me ask you this again, because this, we selected this particular game because not only does it like outright directly evoke some real life issues that we've just covered, but some of them also, I mean, for me, as I watched this scene unfold again now, watching you play through it, it definitely called a real life situation into my head.
You're gonna say the bar?
And I don't know. What's that?
Were you going to say the bar?
No, not the bar. The
okay.
With the android, when the android was getting abused and finally turned on the person that was abusing the android.
Okay, I do want to point out, just remind me so I don't forget something about the bar. I just wanted to point out. But
Jump on it now. Jump on it now. What is it about the bar?
So the one thing I was going to say, as we're talking about, this thing evokes real life, real life situations, real life events that have taken place. I thought it was interesting, and this is actually part of some of the I don't want to say it's negative, but some of the criticisms people have, and that we have brought up a little bit about, like David Cage being a little bit on the nose sometimes, a little heavy-handed with his storytelling. Like the part when they walk into the bar where there's like the sign right out front that says like "No androids allowed" is obviously very reminiscent of like, there was an entire time in American history where it was just like no blacks allowed, or blacks around back, or like, it was like very much like no colored. Here's the colored water fountain. Here's the white water fountain, right? So this being a bar that would say like no androids allowed was clearly reminiscent of this idea of this is like a whites only bar, right? Of the like of the American history days of yore, right? And I thought it was a bit like heavy-handed that the moment you see that sign, he pushes open the door, the very first face, actually the only face that is in focus, because it was one of those depth of field moments where like everyone in the back is kind of blurry and there's only that one face right up front, was that one black guy who turns around and looks right at you and is just like kind of gives you like the shitty face eye of
I remember
it's a fucking android in here now. And it was like, it seemed a bit where I was like, all right, so yes, I get what you're going for.
Going for irony.
Yes, I get that you're going for the irony here, but like, we got it. Like, we understood what the no androids allowed means. Like, we get that is like a reference to, the kind of fact that American history has done this before. Like, I don't necessarily know if you need to be so heavy-handed where now they're like, but imagine if there was a black guy who's giving him the shitty eye for being an android. I'm like, no, I get it. Like, shit always rolls downhill. Like, everyone wants to.
You might have felt the same way, though, if it was a white guy, though. You would have been like, oh, well, look, another white person oppressing somebody else in the country. You might have.
No, almost see what I would have thought was like, you just didn't need to have that moment where he pushes open the door and there's just one face there looking, because the moment is already told by the fact that the sign's there and then he pushes open the door. Almost if he had done a thing where it had been he walked in, and it's, we've all seen these in like old 80s movies, right, where there was like,
Oh, like a
somebody
bunch
walks
of
in the
different
room
people.
and everyone turns and looks and the music stops and that kind of like what? The record scratch moment. Like, you don't have to do the record scratch, but if he had walked in and then immediately panned to a wide angle and it just showed everyone who was like,
Yeah, just kind of look at
there
him.
was the Asian guy, because there was the Asian guy that was in there was the black guy, there was the white guy. If it was just a bunch of people look up and they're like, oh, it's one of these fucking androids, you're like, that's just like better. That's a better like storytelling way to show everyone fucking looks down on them than to be like, check it out, even a black guy thinks that an android's bad. I'm like, no, I got it, Dave. Like, we understand.
Yeah.
Like, remember when we did this to black people, and now black people are doing it to this guy? It's like, it's almost missing your point, because now it's almost making it look like, look, finally black people get somebody they get to look down on. I'm like, that's not the point you're trying to make, Dave. It's not that black people are super excited now that they're like, finally we get to talk shit about androids. It's that everyone is fucking complicit in this, and that we will continue to do these things over and over. So like, maybe like, redirect your fucking thing away from that poor guy who's just sitting there with his beard, kind of trying to have a beer, and just make it be that everyone sucks.
Although I will say this, Craig,
yeah.
I have said this before in the past,
Yes.
in the confines of my groups with other brown men or black men.
It's a weird thing to say, but all right.
I was personally disappointed in how the black and Latino community handled Middle Eastern people in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm saying that, and it's probably not, we'll be here forever if we go down this rabbit hole too, but I just wanted to drop that kind of like, I don't think that what he showcased there is necessarily unrealistic, because I think it's human nature, period, to do that.
Absolutely.
Like, or not makes, maybe it's not human nature, maybe that's the wrong word, but we are definitely in this, we as, at least in the United States, have been a country that has, like, when given the opportunity to be in the club or out of the club, and then you have like people like, we've seen it with Italians and Irish who used to be shit on when they got here, and then they turned around and then became racist towards black people, and then there became this, the 2000s happened, and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then Muslim extremists, and then all of a sudden, those of us here in this country that were constantly prejudiced against became like part of the in crowd. They got to turn around on Middle Eastern people, and so
my original point was that, yes, the ladder rung just keeps dropping, right? And everyone just wants to get up one rung on the ladder so they can look down on somebody below them, because that's just like, why do kids make fun of other kids? Because you find one kid that's not as cool as you, and then you're not that kid, so at least you're not that kid.
And then you could use that kid to spring your popularity up by shitting on him.
And that's my point, is I'm saying, yes, we all understand that shit. That shit goes.
Well, you and I
saying.
Understand that. I don't think everybody does, and that's why I don't really hate on him including that in the game.
I guess more what I'm saying is, a good storyteller who's confident in their storytelling doesn't feel the need to hit that so bluntly on the head, because your belief in your story is that you're like, man, so one of two things is happening. Either I'm telling the story amazingly well, or I have faith that the people that I'm telling the story to, that I am like, that people that are attracted to me are intelligent, or intelligent enough to pick up on the nuance of good storytelling, because otherwise then every story would be like, in parentheses, guess what? Now black people are excited because they're no longer the ones, and you're like, oh my God, we got it, dude. What are you writing this for, like an 8-year-old? Like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that I'm like, yeah, there aren't people that pick up on nuance, because clearly we know there are, right? People that don't pick up on nuance. My point is more that I'm like, Dave, just believe in yourself and believe in your story enough to write for the highest common denominator, and maybe some people will get left behind, and that's okay. Like, let some people have to go Google or go on Wikipedia and read the the Cliff Notes version of the story to figure it out, but raise your own bar, and because that's the way you're going to raise everyone else up, right? If you start telling a higher story, that's when storytelling is elevated, because you believe in yourself enough to say, I'm gonna stick about 80% as high as I can go, not 100%, because I don't want to be a pompous fucking pretentious asshole. But maybe I'll go like 75-80% up the way. I'll fill in some of those extra holes to kind of give you that point, but I don't want to go all the way down to the bottom where I feel like I'm writing like a young adult novel, you know, because I believe in you guys more, and I believe in myself more. And that was just, I mean, maybe that's just me because I'm
That's fair.
I'm more
That's a
hyper
fair
aware of that
assessment.
as somebody who enjoys like telling and, you know, like and being involved in having written stories and stuff like that. Like I look for things like that, like and but it is and I think as like us as people who, whatever, this is about to be the most pretentious thing I'll say, and I'll immediately run from it and pretend I didn't. But like as people who like to create something that is a degree of art, it's obviously not art, but it's like we create something that is of, you know, interest with the podcast. Like we create this of ourselves, right? And so we try to hold ourselves to a high enough standard to be interesting and to be aware of what our abilities are. And so when you see someone who like takes the like easiest road possible out of answering a question or telling a story, it's almost like your friend that's just like always the worst at telling stories, and you're like, oh, Bob.
It's always explaining the joke. Jokes are funnier when you explain them.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. But anyway, that's cool. All right, so we can get back. I'm sorry I dwelled on that too long.
No. That's so and I really don't want to dwell on this one too much, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that watching the part of the story where I watched, you know, this we covered this android getting abused and abused and abused and abused and abused and abused, and finally, you know, just unleashes and breaks programming and unleashes everything on his tormentor into what technically turns out being a crime, really reminds me of the real life story of Centoya Brown.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are not familiar with her, is a 16-year-old girl who had been in prostitution since pretty much she was, I mean, younger than that, like if 12,
or something,
12,
right? Yeah, I think it was 12,
maybe. And was just being, you know, used by older men. I mean, so this older, like 40-year-old man takes her back to his house, and her version of it was that, you know, he was getting abusive, and she finally lost her shit and killed the guy that was technically raping her, statutorily raping her. She went on trial for murder, and it was convicted and is now serving like a 50-year sentence.
Right.
You know, which is, you know, drawn the attention of various celebrities out there who have like keep showcasing the case. She recently lost like some important appeal on it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like becomes this issue of like how can you put this poor young 16-year-old girl away who was being trafficked, you know, and was being, you know, taken advantage of by, I mean, whether he was paying her or not, but taken advantage of by a rapist, and then just put her away for 50 years. You know, the prosecution side of the story is that she went there to murder him. Like her pimp was like, yo, we're going to take his money. And so she went there and murdered him. They took his shit. And then that was, you know, and who knows, I don't know what really happened. I wasn't there, and you know, but it is a crazy scenario that you would take a 16-year-old and put her away for 50 years or whatever,
51
you know,
years,
when she was clearly like being used by all of these people, including the man she murdered.
Right. Also, by the way, I have never seen this. Have you ever seen it? This is an interesting thing to talk about on the show, but there is a documentary called Me Facing Life, Centoya's story, that was made in 2011.
I heard it was out there. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's apparently, I mean, it has very good reviews. Like, people really like it. But it's the story. It was made in 2011, so, you know, it's a little bit old now, but so it's not going to cover the most recent, like you were saying, the fact that she went up for appeals and stuff. But this is the story of everything that happened to her, you know, the case, obviously the lead up to the case, and then the case itself. And then investigators disputing that, saying there was a lack of physical evidence that she was forced into it. They were saying she chose it, and that she went there, you know, to basically rob him and, you know, get his money, and it turned into a murder. And they're like, that's your bad. But yeah, you're like,
and it's a tough scenario
to the point where that becomes the only way out, right? Or that's their only.
Yeah, and it just made me think of it, and that's what I'm saying. I don't really know what happened in that case, and if she was just a young woman who made a lot of bad life choices. I mean, if she was in this system though from 12 years, at 12 years old, I just don't think you
have the right.
Yeah, you can make choices, but you're not. You're not, like, you were getting taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
You know, and at 16, if you make the decision to go to this guy's house because you're like, fuck it, I ain't shit, I ain't never gonna be shit, I'm gonna just go to this guy's house and fucking kill him and take his shit because fuck it, you know, there probably needs to be punishment there, you know.
Right.
I just, you know, that's what mediation and extenuation supposed to be taken into account? Like,
Right.
50
Well, at some
years
point,
for a
when
girl
do we
that,
take responsibility, right, for the situation we put her in to get her to
yeah,
that point in her life, right? I mean, there's
yeah,
there's a
which is,
reason
those
why.
things go toward sentencing.
Right, and we do a lot of people get weird, and we could talk about this for an entire fucking
Yeah.
episode, right? The entire idea of like, oh, why, like a 17-year-old who commits a crime, and we're just like, we're not going to try him as an adult, even though we're like, what, 3 months later he would have been an adult? Like, why are we letting him off the hook? But if he was 4 months older, all of a sudden he goes away for 50 years for the same crime, and so. There is an argument about that, and I understand why people get mad about that, and why other people think it's perfectly warranted. And there is a situation,
And then the racial kind of like disparities, right? Because then you had that fucking
right.
Because you're throwing this 16-year-old girl of color, you're putting her away for 50 years over after she was thrust into a system where she wasn't in control. Obviously, when she got into there, she's clearly a product of other people's abuse. And then you compare it to the fucking asshole kid that raped the girl, and then got like the judge was like, I don't want to ruin your life forever, so he got like parole.
Right, he just
or
got
probation
parole,
or whatever.
Probation,
right? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Taylor, what the fuck was that guy's name? Like, Taylor or whatever
Taylor,
it is.
some shitty white name, but you're like, but the whole thing about that, right, is you're just like, clearly, number one, everything is skewed in one direction of like a certain group. One group is clearly benefiting from the system, right? White people, right? And everyone else is not. And so that's the first part that like this parallels perfectly with this game, is that one group is going to benefit with, you can do whatever the fuck you want as long as you're a person and they're an android, and you will always benefit from the system. Even if you get murdered, you will end up, like at least your case will be exonerated, and that they will fucking destroy that android, even if you were the biggest piece of shit on the planet. So
you know what's funny, Craig? I'm sorry. I got the urge to like just really say this. This is another one, because we've talked about this in the previous podcast. This may be one of those situations where the people are not even necessarily trying to carry out a racist agenda, but the people in decision-making places, right, are just willing to say, oh, well, fuck it, rules are rules, right, until they're confronted with somebody that they identify with, and they're just, and their conscience just gets the better of them, to where they're like, I can't do this. I can't do this to this young person. And that's what that judge looked at that young white kid that raped that girl and thought, and saw himself in that kid's shoes and said, one mistake is going to ruin this kid's entire life. I'm not going to throw him into the system and turn him into even a worse monster and ruin the rest of his life. He made a mistake. He seems like he's really sorry about it. And then they like relax the rules in unheard of ways. They stick their neck out for these people, right? And then but then a Toya Brown comes along and, well, sorry, rules are rules, right? Because that kind of compassion, the same kind of compassion, isn't there. And it's like that cop that like shows up to the scene and sees the white dude with the gun in his hand, acting erratic, ready to shoot somebody, and talks him down because he's being compassionate. Not because he's trying to be racist. He's trying to be compassionate to another human being. But when he shows up and sees the black dude waving the gun, or walking around with a gun in a shopping mall where there have recently been shots, right? He just assumes right away, he gets scared, and he pulls the trigger, because that, like, the human connection isn't there. And again, I think I've said this too. Like, when I went to Iraq, a lot of times the mentality out there like was to not even see people that were not from the United States as almost humans, because you were so worried about your life and your people and bringing your people home. And we were doing police keeping activities out there, and before we even got out there, we were already kind of brainwashed about how we were going to react, how we valued people's lives out there versus the lives of those of us who were sent out there.
Right.
And we weren't police, but we were doing police keeping activities, and
right.
That kind of thinking is dangerous.
Well, of course,
it's very, very dangerous.
And that is how, that's how the entire idea of slavery was like started, right? Is once you can demonize or like dehumanize the other, then it allows you to do things that you don't, feel are bad anymore, because they're not on the same level as you, right? So it makes why people feel comfortable like kicking a dog, but they wouldn't walk up and kick a kid in the face, right? Is because they're like, but it's like not, it's not a person, right? So why is somebody willing to pull over a black guy at night but not a white guy, because they're like, well, but he's probably doing something shitty because he's black. It's like, these are the things. Once you can put somebody, even if it doesn't even have to be 40 pegs below you. Once you can put somebody 1 peg or 2 pegs below you,
yeah, it opens up your ability of things you're willing to do.
Yeah, the things you're willing to do to them open very quickly, and your power over them, at least in your own mind, expands very rapidly, because it allows you to feel that you're like, well, but they're not me, and they're not us, and they're not one of us. And so, I mean, you can speak better to this, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but that has been a historical, maybe now we're hopefully, I mean, I know based on information out now, we're better at this now than we have been, but even to your point you were just making about kind of going out into Iraq, that has historically been one of the power levels that those that run the military have used, and I'm saying historically, like forever, is historically is demonized,
the racial component.
Yeah, dehumanize the enemy, whoever they are, even if it's literally like Sparta against like Greece, right? It's like the idea of dehumanizing the enemy and turning them into the monster that you have to kill, because just going out and treating somebody shitty doesn't necessarily come in everyone's nature. It's not a thing that we just like inherently do, because you see the eyes, like, looking into somebody's eyes makes it hard to fucking do something shitty to them, just by if all things are equal. But once I can see that person is slightly subhuman to me, so many things get opened up of my possibilities. My toolbox, all of a sudden I'm like, fuck, I can go through all these weapons, man. I don't just have to use the fuck you. Like, all of a sudden now I can run over there and throw a wrench at him, or I can fucking shoot this dude, or I can throw a rock, or I can do whatever, because all these things are now available to me. And so it's like, that has been part of that's like the power of what the military has had to use, is because they're like, we can't just send people out and they won't just do it. They won't just run onto a battlefield and just murder people. We have to give them a reason to be able to do it. And the easiest way to do that isn't to just be like, let's sit down and talk about the politics of what they're going to try to do and what we're trying to do. And we're like, yes, we could probably talk it out, but it's probably not going to work. And like, so at the end of the day, like, they're going to be like, here's what they're going to fucking do. If they come here, if they cross this line, here's what they're going to do to your fucking women. Here's the way they're going to do to your fucking people. They're fucking animals. They're not people. Go out there and take them out, right? And so that shit has just
I just remembered, it reminded me of Tyrion's speech to the people at King's Landing when Stannis was showing up.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, you're right. You guys aren't royalty, and you don't own this castle, and you're not rich. You're not going to get rich off this war. You're probably not going to get a lot of thanks even after it's all over. Right. Because, but when these motherfuckers break this wall down, they're going to rape your wives. Right. They're going to break your houses, steal your shit.
Right. And they're like, maybe they will, and maybe they won't.
Yeah, in that case, they probably would have.
But also, the funny thing is, too, the other thing is, too, in that case, you look at it and say, on the other end, they're being told the same thing. Like, those motherfuckers will never let you have what we need. So the only way we can do it is to break them. They're fucking animals, right? So you have two sides being told the same thing. And
dude, listen to like an Israeli soldier, talk about Palestinians and stuff, and then listen to people from Palestine who have encountered Israelis. And it's like, dude, like, I don't know, like to hear both sides, it's just like an actual like teeth-bearing demon monsters over there.
They think the other
side
with
no capability to reason, and there's so much hate there,
Right. And I mean, that's a big part of why like some of this stuff is so deep-rooted that it will never, be resolved in our lifetime, or at least I don't think it will be. I wish it would, but I don't think. But so much of that is because we've fueled these flames for so long, and because people always need somebody else to look down upon, and it is inherent. And also the people all the way up top, right? The people that run everything have an inherent reason to create that kind of chaos, right? I mean,
yes,
maybe
that's the worst part, dude.
Right.
Of the, I don't know. I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, and maybe it's not the greatest place to bury it in the middle of Ready Player 2.
Right.
But I will say it's amazing to me about this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians is that it started with like people with the Nazis, basically trying to exterminate Jews, right? And then engaging on this campaign where they tried to purge them from all of the different places in Europe, right? And then when they were finally defeated, the answer wasn't, here, guys, return to your homes. Here's a bunch of money to help you rebuild. We're going to take care of you because people fucked this up on our watch in our countries. They were like, yeah, you don't really want to come back to Germany and Poland and these places, do you? I mean, they hate you there anyway. You might as well, why don't we do this? We'll give you this other land. These motherfuckers in Palestine, they have this land, and we're going to give you Jerusalem and all that, so we'll just put you over there. That's yours now. And they're like, well, it's not so bad. Jerusalem, the Holy, I'll take it. I kind of don't want to go back to those fucking prejudiced-ass people over there. And the Palestinians were like, what the fuck? This is our land. How you just gonna throw them on our fucking land? And then so like all these fucking European motherfuckers just said, there you go, this belongs to Israel now. And then they just fucking took off. And it's like, you guys figure it out now. You guys got problems, you figure it out. And now instead of both of these people who have been disenfranchised now, like bonding together and being like, yo, fuck this. You don't just get to do this shit. This is some fuck shit you just did, right? Like, they dug in on each other. And now they fucking hate each other. And then, like, the rest of the world is just kind of like, here's some more shit, Israel. Here's some more shit to bomb them with. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And, but I'm technically, I'm not in it. You take that up with Israel, not with me. Don't come to me about that. And then, like, the U.S. is involved largely. And then we wonder why a lot of these Middle Eastern countries fucking hate us. I don't understand why they hate us. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we were involved in that. We got involved in that, and then we financed it, and we armed them.
Yeah, we inserted ourselves in, and then wonder why they're pissed. It's like, the fuck.
But the craziest part is this hatred between the two people that were taken advantage of by these Europeans in the first place.
Right.
Like, they should be directing that hate toward the motherfuckers that fucked the shit up to begin with.
Right.
That's amazing to me.
It is,
but it's like you said, it's like
manipulation, right?
They did that shit that they did with the slavery, with the poor whites and the poor blacks after slavery, where they were just like, whoa, you're still better than them, right? We're gonna make these Jim Crow laws so you're still better than them, and that's what they did. Whoa, here you go. We hated you over in Europe, but we respect you now. Here's your own land because those Palestinians, they suck. Here's some of their land. You're better than them.
What you don't want, what you never ever ever want, if you are in power, is you never want the plebes to unite against you.
Yes,
every
exactly.
time it's happened historically, every single time it's happened has not boded well for those in power. There's been revolts,
mm-hmm.
There's been civil wars where everyone has risen up, and French Revolution, and they've thrown
Cuba.
out the Cuban Revolution. They've thrown out those in power. So what you always want to do is create fucking tension and fucking chaos between them, but not amongst them against you. So this feels like the exact same thing, where it is just what replays over and over in all of these, kind of the when the tale is told of humanity, it will be that the replay has always been, there has to be a rung at the bottom, there has to be a ladder, there has to be a bunch of people at the top who don't give a fuck about anything and can just do whatever they want. There has to be a bunch of people in the middle who are just kind of like all fighting, amongst themselves to kind of maybe get one rung up the ladder. And then there always has to be a group at the very bottom that everyone in the middle can unite against them, so that they don't unite against the ones at the top and get pissed and realize, hey, they've been fucking us this whole time, right? And so that's like, whatever, that's kind of what is happening right now in America, right? Is like, that's what Trump's his whole thing is, unite all these people that could be pissed about, like, hey, the government's taking advantage of us and whatever, and be like, oh no, the old government's been fucking you, but like, I'm here to tell you, those motherfuckers that are marching up onto the with the caravans and this and that and like fucking all this shit, they've been fucking you. So it's like, now, instead of you being united against us and asking for change from me, I can continue to fucking make out like a bandit over here while I make you.
Yeah, because meanwhile the rich are still getting fucking huge tax breaks and getting richer, and the divide is getting richer, and is getting bigger between the rich and the poor.
You had the lower middle class in America celebrating, not just like okay with, celebrating a tax break that gave the top 1% of this country a huge advantage to make so much fucking more money, and just like
it's like so ignorant
outside, like celebrating it. So you're like, this is of all the shit we say about how shitty he is and the Republicans are and whatever they're doing right now. Like, not Republican people, but Republicans in government. Like, the most masterful thing that they were able to pull off is to get people to celebrate for a thing that only helped the top of the top of the top and fucked them over. And it's like, okay, look, well done. Like, hey, you did it, I guess. You convinced everyone to hate everyone else while you get to fucking run around destroying American liberties and getting rid of, like, you know,
destroying the
all of our
environment.
freedoms. Yeah.
Well, you get profits in the short term, and then we're all gonna fucking have a real big problem in 30 years.
Right. There is so many parallels to this, to the idea of, like, you know, the way, like you were talking before when Hitler was like, yeah, I know this fucking sucks, but check out what the Jews are doing to us. Look what they're doing. Look how shitty they fucking are. Let's just get everyone on. Instead of being pissed that your fucking bread line takes you fucking, you know, 17 hours.
Yeah,
to get
somehow
bread,
it's the fault of the Jews.
It's got to be them, because turn left, don't look up. That's all I need you to do. Turn left and look at those motherfuckers. Don't look up at me. It's definitely not my fucking fault. But those guys, and it's super easy to know who they are because their names are easily recognizable, just like their color is easily recognizable. Just like in this case, look at them. They have a circle on the side of their head, and they wear a shirt that fucking strangely enough says Android on it. Super recognizable. We know who the fuck to hate. It makes us allow it gives us free reign to hate who we already are looking for someone to hate. It allows us to easily recognize who we want to hate instead of being like, the fear of the unknown's fucking weird because it's like, that's too hard. It's too abstract. People just
it's not unknown though in this case. It's weird. It's just like willful ignorance.
Well, that's
hey guys, don't look at the CEOs with all this money that they're bringing in and all the tax breaks and all, you know, time after time they keep continuing to make profits. You know, while by the way that we define the success of a corporation is crazy, right? Because the whether or not, like, your success in a given year is determined by how much higher a percentage on profits you're making this year from last year, which is crazy to me. Because if you made 10% profit last year, right, or let's say you had a killer year, you had your best year, 25% profitability, and then the next year you do that again, they're still going to say, not such a good year because you didn't do better than last year.
As somebody who has been in sales, there were times where I would be the number one, like, division. I would be the number one division in the last decade and a half that our company had. Let's just say, right? There were literally times where this happened, and they were like celebrating. Oh my God, CraigMakk, you guys are amazing. This is amazing what you do with the teams. Blah blah whatever. Following year, we would do the exact same thing. And I was like, holy fuck, 2 years in a row? They're going to be giving me a goddamn hand
they're
job
like, no,
for doing it. And they were like,
you guys had a mediocre year.
They're like 0% growth? What the fuck? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
0% growth over the best year we ever had. Remember that?
Yeah, like
remember when you were literally like, we will just give you massages every day from 1 until 3 because we are so fucking excited that you work for this fucking company. And now all of a sudden you're acting like I am this fucking bum that you just got off the street that doesn't know how to do a goddamn thing because all I did was do the same thing again. And they were like, well, yeah, if you're not growing, you know, you're not. What are you bringing to the table? I'm like,
it's
the same
insane.
shit I did last year, which is like, it's that's where we are, right? It's like if you're not growing, you're fucking garbage. And
that's the thing. In order for them to continue to like get those profits and make that money for like the top 1-2%, right? Then that means that the value of the money, in order for the people with less of it, shrinks.
Absolutely.
And nobody's looking at that as like, oh shit, look at all of these rich people that just keep demanding more and more money each year. That's the reason why I'm working 80-hour work weeks and still barely paying rent and meeting all my bills, right? No, that's not the problem. Isn't the rich people taking all the money? They deserve all their money. They need to keep taking more money. Right. You know, the problem must be all these immigrants coming up from the country taking our jobs,
right?
Because they're rolling in dough.
Right.
And you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. How does that make any sense if you've got people buying into these insane theories of economics?
Yeah, we had a decade or like 8 years where companies were like, well, we're not doing well, so we just can't hire people. So then when all of a sudden they started being able to hire a few people, they hired some people that were from another country. And then all those people from these, like middle of America, were all of a sudden, well, fuck.
And by the way, they hired them legally too. They brought those people in like they were hiring them because they were getting special work visas because these people were specially qualified to do shit. Like they were like, oh, this guy is an expert in IT mapping that we don't have here. There's a shortage of them here in the U.S. So we're bringing them over, right? And then people are like, oh, immigrants come and taking our jobs. Like, excuse me, do you have a degree in IT? Because last I looked, I mean, you're a fucking janitor. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with being a janitor, but this guy is not going to be coming and taking your janitor job.
Right.
Trust me.
Right.
It's not, you know what I mean? So.
And actually, well, then, no, that was also the other bummer was then you had for years where there were people that were like, I'm a doctor in my country, but I come here and I have to become a janitor because, like, it doesn't. There's no equivalent here from what I did there, and
well, yeah, but I mean, like when we're talking about the outsourcing of corporate America to foreign jobs, they weren't bringing doctors over that weren't.
But I'm saying even the problem is that even when it does happen, it happens because America's just so fucking weirdly twisted in the way that we like recognize people from outside the country. So it's like, no matter what, if you're the other, if you are from outside of America, you are just like. You're an easy target. And so when you live in a society like right now, or a climate like right now, where it is so much easier to whip up hatred, because now we've also opened the floodgates to say, now it's not only okay to hate people that come and take your jobs, but now it's okay to just hate somebody because they're like, just because they're black, or just because they're Puerto Rican or Mexican, or because they are fucking Middle Eastern, or because they're Jewish, or because whatever. Like, so now we've reopened all those old crazy fucking, like, the wounds we kind of thought we were, we knew they were there, but we were hoping they were like maybe getting put to bed a little bit, like people weren't being as open about it. Like, so now we tore off that fucking Band-Aid and said, now it's just cool to be pissed at people just because they're not you. So now, instead of being scared of the unknown, now you're scared of anything that's different from you. And so that's super, like, empowering for somebody who's, like, in a pretty bad situation and happens to be white, because they get to be like, well, fuck this, because I'm white, so I should be crushing it, because everybody hates the blacks, right? I mean, that seems like, why am I not just making fucking money left and right? So I'm just going to hate everybody because I'm fucking not succeeding. And Donald Trump was like a dumb poor kid from New York, and it was not true, but like Donald Trump was a dumb poor kid from New York, and he made it, so I should be able to make it too. And you're like, well,
the small $1 million loan from his father.
Well, you saw all that fucking numbers that said that he was like he had like 15 million by the time he was like 6 years old, and like.
He did.
$35 million trust.
He pissed away. If he had like probably handled it better, he'd have been much more rich.
No, yeah, absolutely. If anything, you're like, he's actually an abject failure because he's been given so much and has done
like
so little.
If you gave that amount of money to a financial money manager and they gave you back what he has now, you'd be like, you're fired. You're immediately fired. You're like,
you are revoked. You're objectively bad at what we did with you. Like, if this was like that old, remember everyone in our age back in the day, we used to have to do the lemonade stand game, where it's like, hey, you're given like $10, and that's supposed to be like $1,000, and you have to run a lemonade stand, and there was always one kid who just sucked at it, and there was always one kid who was amazing, and then everyone else was somewhere in the middle, right? Donald Trump is always the kid who sucked at it. Like, yeah, okay, so he went from $10 to like $13, but that's only because his parents gave him $175,000 of investment in a lemonade stand game, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, this kid sucks. Stop giving him money.
I sold candy for real in school when I was younger. I used to go to I used to go to Costco, and you could get like back in the day you could get like a 30-pack of like M&Ms or whatever for $10, and then sell them for like $1 or $2, but like you would sell them in class while the teacher was. So then there was like premium value. You'd be like, all right, I'll give you $2 for the M&M pack.
I did the pens.
Like, nice.
I did the multicolored pens. You know, the ones where you like press down. You remember you press down on them and you could like change it between like red, blue, green, like around the edge. So those things, you could literally, same deal. You could buy them. Like by us, it was still Price Club. It wasn't even Costco yet. And like I would buy a case of those things, and you can get them for it was like 300 of them or something for like $15 or something like that. and you could walk into school, and people would buy them, even if they bought them off you for 50 cents, right?
Still a profit, yeah.
You're fucking killing it. Like when you're fucking 12 and you're like just coming home like it was literally the version of drug dealing in like my town was like I'm killing it off these multicolored fucking pens. CraigMakk was a fucking magnate when it came down to it. I was just destroying.
You know what the version of drug dealing was in my school?
Drug dealing?
Yeah. and guns. And guns.
There you go. Okay. Nice.
But no, and I also, you know what I didn't sell drugs or guns, but I did graduate at one point to I was selling hall passes at one point, like signed. I obtained like some real ones, forged signature on a bunch of old ones because I came across a slip of like a bunch of blank ones, so I had like 50, and then I went and actually like forged the signatures by tracing them onto like all 50, and then I was distributing like selling them for $5 a pop if somebody wanted to just roam the school. Yeah,
that's pretty solid. I can go so far as to admit that I never graduated past selling multicolored pens because I was a big fucking pussy. So I apologize for that. Anyone who was waiting for the CraigMakk story when the movie comes out and eventually I'm like Whitey Bulger and I'm selling fucking drugs on the street? Nope. I got out while the going was good when I was making money off my multicolored pens at a 500% increase, and I was like, I'm gonna call it a day on this. This feels okay for me. This feels like a nice, like I'm on the 3rd floor. I'm gonna get out of this 50th floor building that looks crazy up there. I don't want to go up there.
When I got out of selling hall passes, I eventually got caught on one of them. I got out of selling hall passes and then and candy in school. My first like real job was a telemarketer.
By the way, can I just say our t-shirt's going to be when I got out of selling hall passes and candy in school. ... Live the man cave on the back. Yo, look at us. We were fucking players. Selling candy and hall passes. I was a fucking telemarketer,
dude. At 15 years old, I was making crazy money. Like, I had money hand over fist telemarketing and shit like that. I even became, like, the office manager at 15 years old. I had so much money, I was just, like, buying gold. You know how, like, those big-ass gold nameplate chains? Yeah. I had one of those shits.
Oh,
like,
wow.
It's like 15. Wow. I didn't know what that was making, like, a crazy amount.
I'm so glad that's like 3 years before I met you, so I didn't get to see the fucking nameplate.
Yeah. I still had it. I brought it to college. I was
gonna say I did see the fucking nameplate. You did have that.
Yeah.
Back when we were playing fucking NBA Jam, or when we were playing live. Yeah. You definitely were rocking the nameplate, and I thought that was awesome.
Maybe.
And I was like, fuck! God damn! If only I'd stuck it out in the game. If I'd stayed in the fucking multicolored pen game, I'd have my own one that said CraigMakk on it. It'd be fucking awesome.
My parents were somewhat relieved when they discovered I wasn't selling drugs. Where are you getting all this money from? I was like, I got a job. Like, what kind of job is paying a 15-year-old this kind of money? It's like, I'm a telemarketer. People think I'm 30 years old when I call them.
That's pretty great.
And that's like, I can't recommend it enough. You got to watch this fucking movie. It's Sorry to Bother You. And
yes.
It's loosely about a dude that needs money and starts telemarketing.
So I was going to ask you, actually, we didn't get to mention it before. It's not based on a true story, or it is?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It is
so
not,
it's
but
just
it will, like this game, by the time you're done watching it, you will be inspired to discuss a million different things about real life.
Right.
That this thing kind of, unlike David Cage, doesn't beat you over the head with it, but like... It's definitely just like a strong correlation, and it touches on enough that you'll start going down roads that you're like, fuck, like, and it's just really, really like original, different, and really, really cool. It's got cameos, or actually full out like minor roles by a bunch of major like actors that you'd be like, oh shit, he's in it too.
That's cool.
So
they
really,
didn't clue you in on any of that from the commercials.
Nope.
They don't show you any. So I'm pretty excited about that.
The reason I got like excited about it was they showed one scene between can I tell you one of the actors who's in it?
Yeah, it's fine.
One scene between the main dude that's in it, who's a really good actor by the way. His name is escaping me right now, but him and Danny Glover, and nice. Danny Glover's teaching him the ropes on how to telemarket properly.
Oh, you're talking about the main character guy.
Yeah, he's teaching him how to like telemarket. Like he's like, here's why you ain't making the money, young blood. He talks like that too.
Yes, I do actually remember that. I do remember that. I do remember. He's like the
use your white voice.
Muse that like
you gotta use your white voice. Yeah.
I do remember that in the commercial. That was pretty funny. Yeah.
It was fucking great. That was a great scene. It's so smart. And then like the movie. It's on demand right now on
Okay.
FiOS. So
'Cause I was-
you actually have to pay for it. Yeah,
Okay.
like it won't be like on HBO or anything yet. But man,
I was going to
it's
say, I
so
remember
fucking
seeing
good.
the commercials for that simultaneously to seeing commercials, or like I feel in my head it feels like it was like around the summertime when I was seeing the same commercials for Black Klansman, where like it was like the movie was kind of
I
coming
didn't see
out.
that one.
Well, I didn't see either one of them, and that's what I'm saying. Like I remember seeing that they came out kind of around the same time. Because part of that I thought was interesting because the whole idea of Black Klansman is a black guy who goes
Right.
like he goes undercover as a white Klansman.
That's a real movie. I was looking
That's
forward to
based on
seeing
a
that
true
movie.
story. Yeah.
Is it is it already out on video or is it in the
I
theaters
don't
right now?
know.
Or
And that's Spike Lee, right? That's a Spike Lee joint, I believe. I'm pretty
I
sure.
think so.
I'm like 99% sure. I could be wrong, but so that one I believe is on demand, like on Netflix or something now. So that's why that's why I
And
thought
this
maybe
is probably
that
something we would normally cover during our regular podcast, but
Yeah.
I would be remiss. Oh shit! Black Klansman has the motherfucking dude from Girls, or actually Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren is in it. Yeah, he's the one that goes undercover as so the black guy establishes contact as a white Klansman over the phone, like through the phone, and then they're like, "Fuck." So we can't just send you in now because they'll clearly know you're black. So he's like, well, I need he's like, I need my partner. I need a partner that can go in and pretend to be me. And basically,
Right. So it's Kylo. So he's a Jewish dude.
It's like Cyrano de Bergerac, yeah. So he gets him.
Who is clearly like, if you look at Adam Driver, he looks Jewish.
But they even talk about that. Like they're like, don't you hate them too because you're fucking Jewish? And he's like, yeah, of course. But like,
by the way, Adam Driver's a Marine. You know that, right?
Is he really?
Yeah, he's former Marine.
That's cool as shit. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. But
I want to say he deployed too. But he talked about it on Saturday Night Live when he was on there.
When he did the fucking Kylo Ren as the undercover boss.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
By the way, Black Klansman is on Amazon Prime Video now.
That's
you can actually.
I knew it was on either Netflix or Amazon Prime. Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna watch that one. And now I want to check.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that too soon.
I want to check out.
But that dude, you gotta. When you see Sorry to Bother You, man, let me know what you think. I just thought I hadn't seen something like that in a while. It was so different and awesome.
Are you officially gonna make that again, new, watch that shit? Because I will go check that out.
No, we got to go back and see. We've gotten off of those in a while, and I want to see what my last recommendation was to you. I might just stick with that, and I just write a review on our site for this one. Right. But if you watch it and you're inspired, you're like, yo, dude, we got to talk about this shit. Like, it's. By the way, the actress in that, like the female lead, girlfriend experience material, like straight up.
Really? I do. Yeah, I feel like I vaguely remember. I remember
Tessa Thompson.
Yes. Okay.
So hot.
I definitely remember her.
So fucking hot.
Because I remember thinking she was amazingly hot. Like just even.
Lakeith Stanfield is the name of the main dude. I don't know what else he was in.
Tessa Thompson is the one.
She's in Selma.
She was in Thor Ragnarok. She played Valkyrie.
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
she's
amazing in that. She's amazing in that. She's in.
She's in Creed. She's in Creed. She's in the Creed.
Yeah,
that's who she is.
Yep.
Yes, and she's in Westworld. I'm so stupid. Of course.
She's the
hot ass chick from
this fucking place over. Yeah. She's
I'm so stupid.
She's kind of blowing up right now. She's blowing up right now.
Dude, she's great.
She's
great.
She is an incredible actress.
Yeah. Seriously.
She gets you in the heart, man. You're like, oh man, you're good at just being fucking like cool and chill and. Like,
I hated her in Westworld, and yet she was still charismatic.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, that's a harder role for you to like, quote unquote, like her because she's supposed to be a bitch. But even in that, you're like, she's cool. Like she exudes this like charisma that like she walks into the room and everyone's like, damn, this bitch is like killing it, right?
Yeah.
Like so, it's crazy that you can be like a fucking asshole. You can be like Android Hitler in that movie and still fucking be like likable in some weird way, So like when you see these other movies. And actually it's like, so Thor Ragnarok, which you should see because it's just good, but like it's an interesting mix because she is like kind of an asshole in the beginning, but she bleeds through a lot of this, like you kind of learn about her and she becomes very incredibly likable and like I would go as far as say she becomes like a lovable character by the end. So it's kind of interesting to see that she can play these roles where like in Sorry to Bother You, where she's just like like girlfriend experience. Then you have Westworld, which is the other end of the spectrum, where she's like a fucking badass but an asshole. And then you have something like Thor Ragnarok, where it almost splits the difference, where she's like a badass but is also likable. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that's actually legit acting. Like that you can do everything.
Yeah.
So, good for her, man.
But by the way, so this is the other trail. Like now, because it's new and it just came out, like I feel like compelled to talk about this. And this is what happens when we don't have we haven't done a regular show and enough. We've been putting out parts on 27 for a while, but fuck it, man. I want to like save this discussion for later. But I normally I didn't want to watch this trailer. I didn't want to watch it. I was resisting it because I already know I want to see the movie. 100%. I'm down to see the movie, and the trailer was just sitting there. I was like, fuck, I gotta watch it. I'm gonna watch it. I watched Get Out with no trailer, having no clue what it was about, and I had the most fucking amazing experience like that, right? Like when the movie flipped and it turned, I was like, oh shit, this is great. Right. And unfortunately now I've seen the trailer for this, even though the trailer just makes me want to see it more, but now I wish I didn't know anything about it. But the trailer for Us came out, Jordan Peele's new film, which is coming out in March. Have you seen the trailer?
I have not. No, I've actively stayed away from it for the same reason.
Okay, don't. Yeah, don't. Fuck.
Because I did the same thing with Get Out. I just saw that off of like people talking about it, but not seeing anything about it, and just like people saying like, see this fucking movie, like see this fucking movie. So I was like, cool. I stayed away from everything, and then I went and just saw it, and it blew me away. And I was like, you know what? It's very hard to do in like 2018 to stay away from trailers and be like spoiled on.
Because they're gonna keep pumping that fucking trailer. You're gonna see that all over the place.
Right.
Oh, dude, Jordan Peele is a new like Stephen King meets Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like you already knew he had like this fucking amazing twisted mind from Key and Peele. Like the kind of fucking skits they were coming up with. They were movie quality. They were amazing. Just like the premise of a lot of those skits were just fucking awesome.
Right.
Well,
and also the fact that he's so like you kind of have this vibe of like what we hoped that early M. Night Shyamalan was kind of giving us, but then obviously we then realized like, oh, he wasn't up to the task because he tried to recreate that kind of, he tried to recapture that lightning in a bottle over and over until eventually he kind of gave that up and said, I'm just going to make good movies, or I'm going to make movies, right? I'm going to make movies I like and see if you like them. And they're actually, he's like better now, right? But that first thing,
he's hit and miss.
Right, true, right. But at least once he gave up on trying to recreate Sixth Sense, he got better.
Okay.
Right? Like that's what he tried. He had to get away from. And so, but the beauty of like what like Jordan Peele is like, he is what we thought M. Night Shyamalan might be.
Yeah.
But right now, at least so far, we're hoping he is going to continuously deliver. And what I've heard of from us is like, it is, at least so far, seems like it's going and it's not.
Oh, dude, the trailer makes me want to watch it like right now. Like if they were like, you know what, pay $50 and watch this movie tonight, I think I would do that.
Really? Wow.
I mean, just because I was like, I can avoid any more spoilers, any more like I want to see this movie. Right. I know I want to see this movie, and I can go right now and get the advanced.
Won't get ruined for me,
Yeah, maybe we need to get on that list of like reviewers that get sent the fucking movies in advance.
I like you just said maybe. Here's the answer.
Yeah, we do.
Of course we need to get on that. Yeah, we need to get on. How do we fucking
Somebody suggested that to me a while back. Somebody who was in the industry suggested that to me a while back, and we'll see what's up. Actually, maybe I could reach out. One of my good friends works over at IMDb. I talk to her about it.
If you do that, by all means, let me know. I'm telling you right now, I will get together with you on a weekly basis. I will fucking drive up there. You could drive down here. We'll figure it out. We will find a reason to get together weekly to be able to watch movies early.
We have enough movie reviews. I think we'd qualify.
We should. We have done enough in the industry. I like how we're pumping ourselves up right now. But all that shit being said,
we're good enough. We're smart enough.
And gosh darn it, people like us. All right, so let's probably, unless there's anything else specific.
I got two more general subject matters. One is a real quick hit. So just wanted to point out they talked about Connor explained Therium, and you remember one of the articles you had picked up before. when we were, maybe it was Kara, it was talking about they were mining, that Russia was trying to get into the Antarctica, because it was rich in thorium. So now all these countries are like kind of making this rush to Antarctica. And now you know why it's important.
I was like, oh shit. Like, I even said that. I was like, that's cool. They finally explained that. Like, I even said that when it happened, because that was kind of a cool way that they leave you hanging for a couple hours before you even know what the fuck that is, and now you know, and that was interesting. That was very cool.
Yep. And the last question I kind of want to leave you with is, I think you would agree with me when I say, out of all the missions we played, this one kind of took a different turn. In just its format, how you proceeded. It became more about like, this one became less about necessarily
house cleaning the game
choices. Well, but like I feel like the other ones were kind of more either getting to know the basics or making some choices about a general philosophy and establishing kind of character direction, whereas this one may have been more about like uncovering a mystery. And most of the time you were going to, yeah. And so that's kind of how I wanted to do. What were your impressions of this compared to the other one? And did you like it more, less, the same, differently?
I liked it a lot, actually. So I think on this that my thought, and I don't know if this is going to play out like throughout the rest of the game, but right now in my head, it is almost like they have created these 3 different characters which allow them the ability to give you different types of gameplay moments. Because so far, Connor's 2 big moments have been much more kind of, Dark Knight Detective / Heavy Rain / like you're solving a crime or a mystery, and it's find all the pieces and then, solve who did it, and then go, figure, like in this one, figure out who murdered him, and the other one, talk the guy down, use the clues you found out to talk the guy down, right? Whereas the other ones are much more about like, determine who you are within this world. Like, how do you view things within this world, or figure out how you're going to interact with androids to humans and stuff like that. So it's like those take a little bit more of a slower burn, whereas these seem a lot more, the build for the tension is definitely there. The idea of it being a little bit more gameplay mechanic, even though it's all the same gameplay, but these just feel a little bit more heavily weighted towards gameplay, just because it's like, okay, shit, there's a murder, you have to figure it out, like figure out who did it, whereas the other ones are definitely more like go get paint, so I enjoy these. I don't know if it's always going to be that way. I enjoy these because they're almost a nice they're like a palate cleanser from the other ones, where you're like, I'm going to walk around the house and clean up and talk to this guy about the meaning of androids in the world where androids and humans have to get together, and then his shitty son's going to come in, and then you're going to realize where they all fall and whatever. Like, there's that, and then they have these moments where they're like, you're a fucking cop, go do cop shit. And so, like, that's a nice palate cleanser from, because if everything was just, you're a fucking house cleaner, you're a fucking, you're a essentially kind of a nursemaid, and if they were like, if Connor was like a fucking janitor, I'd be like, oh my god, why do you even have 3 characters? They're all just the same fucking thing, and we're just like doing menial bullshit. Like, it would get boring. Now, again, I could be wrong. Maybe that's not the way the story's going to go, but to me right now, if the whole game was him, it would probably just be like, okay, why not just be, it could just be like the fucking, like Batman the game where you're a robot, right? Where it just solve crimes and punch people. But like, if it was all them, it would be boring. So the nice break is almost like, it's really good because it allows you to take a step back every other mission and say, all right, now we're going to do something a little bit more chill. Now we're going to do something a little bit more intense. Now we're going to do something a little bit more chill. And so it's been really fun seeing that kind of dichotomy between the storytelling.
So this is what I'll say is, at this point, you're kind of, they're giving you building blocks for the game. You're still in the building block stage, right? I know it seems like we've been at this longer, but in reality, like, this was mission 6, and these are all like 20 minutes. So I mean, the building blocks are what you've said so far. Like, that's the, 2 of them are focused more on philosophy, or one of them is like regaining her memory or her place. The other one's like focusing on philosophy generally, and then this third guy is just doing cop shit, like more, like discovering the kind of like the state of some crimes or whatever, right?
Right.
and they're introducing you all the characters, and then all the characters surrounding these, and then you're gonna see as the episodes, each episode, I mean, going forward even, is gonna get increasingly like elements are gonna start to blend from each, not necessarily the characters crossing over yet,
right?
Maybe, but maybe not. But they'll start to blend in terms of like one character doing one thing and then doing another thing, and then like this, and the story's going to start to get more intense. This is the calm before the storm.
Right.
So enjoy it. Definitely enjoy it. Enjoy the happy-go-lucky shit, like, you know, because we will have those chapters where you just finish and you're like breathing hard and like, you good, Craig? Because now we're going to talk about this shit. You're like,
right,
okay.
Right.
Just give me a second. Yeah, I mean, so I'm enjoying that with each. I don't know if you're feeling the intensity increase a little bit, like incrementally
Definitely.
in each one so far, but it's starting to. I'm really looking forward to when we ramp up, like when it ramps up and you finish, like, holy fuck, you know, because we will get there.
Right. I guess my favorite part about all of this is that we do a 3-hour episode for about 27 minutes of gameplay. So this Ready Player 2 is going to be it's going to be a 500-hour fucking magnum opus that we're going to be like, this is what we leave to the world. Look how amazing we were. Like, when we're dead, go back and listen to our fucking 500-hour fucking dissection of this game that took about 20 hours to play through, but it's pretty great. I feel like
it's gonna be monstrous. You know how long we've been at this? Is my controller just died and I had to replug. I had to like take the other one out and plug my headset into that one.
Nice.
While you're talking.
That is how long we've been doing this. Perfect.
It's probably our cue to stop. But yeah, hopefully somebody who's been listening to this started on Twitch and then was like, you know what? They're at the part where they're talking anyway. I'm just gonna take this on my phone and listen to it in the car.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that, probably. But.
Yeah, no. Hopefully you had to drive to fucking Boston from Florida because you had enough time to get there. Jesus.
Oh man! Eventually, you and I will probably go back and listen to this like 5 years down the road and be like, "How did we think about shit back then?"
What do we really think about? Well, no. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna listen to this once the eventual Android overtaking happens. I'm gonna be like, what did I say? Did I say anything shitty about androids that's going to come back and bite me when they decide to fucking be like, you've been taken down. That's the end of CraigMakk's done. It's the end of the game.
Do you think?
I don't want any of that.
Do you think when your daughters are like later teenage years, maybe they're like, oh shit, Dad's on YouTube, and they go back and actually watch these or listen to you talk?
Will they listen?
Yeah.
Or
you think
am I
that's
worried about them listening? Those are two very different questions.
Both.
Will they listen? Yeah, probably. I mean, I would assume they'll. Well, actually, we don't necessarily know what the future is going to be like, right? Like in terms of will every one of their friends all have done something on the internet at a certain point where they'll be like, this is not cool anymore, right? Like. It's possible. Like, we don't know, right? Like, it could be so democratized where we're down to the point where it's like it's everywhere.
Right.
I guess there's more the issue of, like, I if they want to listen to it, I'd be okay with it. I think it would probably be one of those things where, like, without being, like, shitty about it, I would say that I look at it almost the same way that certain actors look and say, like, I want to wait till my kids are a certain age where they can, like, understand it and get it.
Right.
You know, like I've definitely had podcasts on, like, in the car, and they've heard bits and pieces. They're like, hey, that's Dad, right? And I'm like, okay. The moment you've now realized that it's like that you weren't like looking at your Kindle anymore, and you like paid attention to me, I'm gonna shut this bitch off right now.
Turn
right?
this off.
It's like it needs to go down. But like that is. That's kind of more of a, like, when I want to have.
You sure do say fuck a lot, Dad.
Right. Well, that's the thing they would just probably say on a Tuesday. They're just like, you sure do say fuck a lot, Dad. I'm like, I sure do, honey. Love you.
That's gonna be on that's a T-shirt. Yeah. You sure do say fuck a lot, Dad. And then on the back, live from the man cave.
Exactly. So I think that's where we are now. Is that I'm like, from a, like, them, you know, thinking about it and, like, breaking it down, like, talking about it, whatever. I probably would want it to be when they're old enough to, like, understand, and they might listen and be like, "You're fucking corny, Dad," and I'd be like, "Nailed it. All right, cool. Let's shut this shit off. Watch a movie. Love you, honey." But but I do think it's something that we have to know will be out there, right? Is like our kids will have easy access to this shit, and they'll be able to listen and say, I don't know, like if they listen to some of the earlier episodes, they'll be like, hey man, Dad was
what the fuck were
weird.
you on?
Yeah, Dad
He's
was
a
weird. And
fucking-
they'll be like, you're right, honey. Let's go drinking. I don't want to fucking. Let's not talk about Dad anymore. Let's talk about your faults.
And I think that, you know, if we're lucky enough that this kind of stuff is still on the internet, you know, like in 40 years or something, it might be really cool, whatever, you know, to have our kids when we're already gone or something, you know, have our kids, if we're gone, but no, I mean, we'll probably still be around in 40 years, but, you know, yeah, or maybe after we're gone, you know, for our kids to be able to turn this shit on and just have hours and hours of listening to us talk.
Right. Well, so that part
You know,
of it
because-
is very, very reminiscent of, you know, some Black Mirror shit and all that, where it's like our digital presence will be here forever, and so will it prevent people from moving on, right? Like if they can just sit and listen to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of you, do they ever really get to kind of let you go because you're kind of always there, right? Like they can always.
Oh, CraigMakk trying to start the podcast back up. this is going to be a half hour.
Here we go. But no, but it's an interesting thing, right? Like because we've never had, like, we've all seen, like, for example, a perfect example of this. It's Christmas time, right? One of my favorite movies of all time is Christmas Vacation. One of my favorite sequences in that movie, even though it's partially goofy and partially serious, is when Clark gets caught up in the attic and he ends up watching the old Christmas movies, right? And he sees like his family is like 1958 Christmas, right? And he's like wearing all the old, his like mom's old clothes that he found up in there to stay warm and shit. But it goes from being very goofy to being very beautiful, because there's this moment of this like grown-ass man who is reliving the Christmases of his youth through video, right? Because think when that movie was made, like in the 80s, the most you had to remember was you had pictures and you maybe had 3 minutes of video, right? Because that's it. Like, I mean, because to like an entire reel-to-reel video was 3 to 4 minutes, you know, so people weren't getting like we have now, where you have.
What would you do if you sang out to?
Yeah, people don't have the thousands of pictures, you know. Like I took 700 pictures, I think, on Christmas alone, just because why not?
Yeah,
because I could just sit there and go snap. I could take 10 for every second that I wanted one picture of, because I'm like, I don't know, one of them's gonna come out good, but I don't go back and delete them. I just save all 10 of them because they're on my phone and it's easy to save. So now imagine when like the next generation grows up, there's going to be that moment where they have infinite amount of pictures and video and sound clips and audio of their like loved ones who are no longer here anymore. That's
the crazy part.
To like perseverate on and think about for like ever and ever and ever, and that becomes the.
And it won't just be like
Right.
I'm sorry. Like for me, like I had one of my close cousins, who's like about my age, died of a accidental self-inflicted gunshot wound when he was 13. I want to say he was right about my age, and I still have memories of him.
Dude? I've been doing a podcast with a 13-year-old the whole time.
Damn it! Hey guys, it's me.
Sorry,
I did that, by the way.
I had to lighten the mood.
No, dude, I did that. We were playing H1Z1 before. I jumped in a random party with 5 people, and I made my voice high. I was like, "Hey everybody, I'm 9 years old. We're about to have fun or what?" And I started going the list of things I was gonna do. I was gonna steal the vehicles. I'm gonna take all your ammo. Started going down a list of all the stupid shit 9-year-olds did, and like people. Some people laughed. Like one guy was about to like seriously quit.
Nice. He was
like, "I'm not playing with this kid." No, but anyway, getting back to the depressing shit. No, but like my cousin, he died, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me, and looking back, like so sometimes when I like kind of saying prayers or whatever, I still say a prayer for him, and I remember him fondly, but. My memories are mostly based on like old grainy memories in my head and from pictures. It's like it'll be different being able to watch like a fucking ultra HD fucking video of this dude talking, and you know what I mean?
Right.
And this technology is pretty fucking great that if you really want to go back and preserve their memory accurately, you can go back and now see your dad saying some really ignorant shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? And remember that he wasn't a great guy after all.
Right. Well, it doesn't allow you to just preserve the memories you want, right? Unfortunately, kids,
Exactly.
guess what? I also preserved this fucking 3 hours. You got to listen to that shit
Here's
too.
here's
So,
Grandpa being racist.
yeah, right,
You know,
exactly.
like, what the
So like,
fuck?
there is a weirdness to our memories being limited, right? To like, we pick out the best parts of the things we want to remember, and so the digital kind of present that we're in, allowing us to force upon you all of this memories, is in some ways, it's like you said, it's negative because it well, not negative. In some ways, it is agnostic because it allows you to see the person as they were, right? It's not a positive or a negative. It's with this is what they were. You get to see everything they have to offer, and some of that's going to be great, and some of that's going to be terrible, and it doesn't allow you to sugarcoat it and whatever. But the weird part about it is that when you can't just live off memory, it doesn't like memory is what the only thing that allows you to eventually move on, right? Because the only thing that allows you to eventually is that like forget about living in the present is the fact that the like our brains can only really memorize like remember somebody so well. Like I mean, we've all had that moment of being like I can't even really remember exactly what my let's say for example like my grandma looked like in motion. I can only remember like still images of her. Like I can remember in photographs, right? But I
It's me with my
like
grandfather.
but I can't. What'd you say? What'd you say?
That's me with my grandfather.
Right. He's like a photograph, right? But it's not a video anymore because over time your memory starts to erode to the point where you're like, I can remember like that moment where I was sitting next to her and she was telling me the story, or whatever. But I can't remember her like walking into a room and talking and blah blah, blah whatever. Like that part starts to kind of fade. And if you always have, and part of that is what allows you to move on, right? Is that's what allows you to let go the like pain part of losing somebody is because as part of their memory gets eroded, you only remember the parts that are beneficial to you moving on, and then eventually you get to the point where they are just a beautiful memory, but not a current living thing that kind of they're not a ghost that haunts you. And so if you have all of this video and all of this audio and all of these pictures that we are right now, we are the first generation that's going to die and leave this shit behind for our next generation to say, I don't know, never get over me. Never get over me because here's
Yeah, but I mean, there's also like a good, like for instance, I was shown my great grandparents at some point.
Right.
Like a picture of them. I don't remember what they look like or anything. And they're like, as far as my family is concerned, it goes like in my kind of head or heart, it goes back to my grandparents.
Right.
I'm then again, I'm not one of those guys that like runs down my family tree and goes, oh well, the great, whatever this guy came over, I don't really do that. But if there was like legitimate like Ultra HD video out there where I could still shit, this is the dude that was like my great 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 grandfather. That's just like sitting there for me. Yeah, I think I would. That would be interesting to me.
No, of course.
But I'm not digging back through like fucking old. I'm not going to somebody's house where these things are stored in Peru to track that shit down. Like I just,
Right. No, but that I guess my point is that of course we would. What I'm saying is it's not so much that it's not so much bad for like you going back and uncovering this like amazing book of pictures of your like grandfather that when he was like in like in 1930 whatever, like doing something awesome, right? That would be like this crazy uncovering, like this find. It would be like an archaeological find where you'd be like, oh my god, this is amazing, this exists. What I'm saying is more like, for example, now we are living in a world where people will lose their significant other, let's say prematurely, let's say 20 years prematurely, and they will never be able to move past it because they'll just go on their like Facebook page and look at all the pictures and the videos they posted. They'll be able to go on and listen to audio of them that they recorded on holidays and stuff like that. Hours and hours and hours of stuff that will prevent them from being able to like pocket that away and say, hey, like it is what it is. It was terrible. I'm sorry I lost this person, but at a certain point you have to move past it, right?
Do you think
live
that's
in a perpetual state of?
I'm not sure if that's like a psychological surety because like to the opposing viewpoint, one of the best ways for like our PTSD veterans in treatment
Right.
has been to use virtual reality to take them back to the very spot where they were patrol or encountered these, these traumatic events, and help them
And that's
kind of
done
get
for people
over
that
it.
are fear of heights, is to put them in virtual reality and put them up somewhere high.
Yes, so I'm not sure.
Right.
Maybe I don't know that it would prevent somebody from getting over it, and maybe it might even help. I don't know. I just don't know enough about that aspect of the psychological science when it comes to losing a loved one, and that's actually your spouse or something like that. I don't know whether it would help or hurt. Definitely, it's like anything, right? If you do it too much,
Right.
you can go blind.
Right. Well, I do know
that was a joke. I was talking about masturbation.
Yes, I got it.
Reference.
Masturbation joke. I got it. I just felt like we were having a serious conversation.
Then you would move. You're like, I want to ignore the awkward thing you just said. I just want to make sure that you understood it was a joke, and I wasn't really talking about going blind.
I got it.
All right.
So there were
Let's
like
awkwardly move past that.
There were stories about people that weren't able to get past the like 9/11 shit because they had like even just like voicemails from the person on the day that it happened, and it just like they would just sit and listen and listen and listen and listen. Right now, is that everybody? Of course, that's not everybody. But the point is, that's just that's just a small piece of a moment that people had. Right, of like, oh my God, this was the phone call I got that day, and I just can't, like, I just go back and listen to that because it, like, part of that is also, it's like, I'm listening to the trauma of the moment, so that's, like, another reason why it's going to be even more traumatic.
Yeah.
It's like a person calling to say, like, I love you and I won't come home, right? But then there were other people that were listening to the message from their husband, like, hey, honey, I'll see you soon, like, I love you, and that's the call they got, like, an hour before, the fucking, like, planes hit, and so that wasn't a traumatic moment. It was just like the last moment they had, and so people get caught up in that. Now imagine if you had all of the hours to listen to and to like kind of keep alive, and that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to keep somebody's memory alive, right? I mean, because honestly, like I would love to be able to say like I have hours and hours of video of my grandma to go back and watch. Like I wish I did. Like I just like it's because I can feel parts of that disappearing, right? As I get older, like I'm not old, but like as I get older, my memory.
But you old as fuck for this club.
Right, for this earth, but you old for this club. So like, the whole thing is like, as you get older, that shit just evaporates, right? It goes like, so another thing, I have a friend of mine who died like in high school, like a very close friend of mine who died back in high school, and it was like super like traumatizing to me at the time, and it is like a thing that I've come to grips with. I think is actually just. I always used to say was like just traumatizing to me at the time, and now I kind of say I just think it's just generally traumatizing. Like it's a thing that like as a kid I wasn't like really ready to deal with, and like I don't think as an adult I'm like still ready to deal with the fact that I have like, because even as I get older you realize like, oh fuck, I have a friend who would be like 40 now, and is like he was like I don't know, like 14. So like how much of that his life he lost. That's crazy that I've lived 3 times longer or 2 times longer than he lived at the time. Like more than him, not just like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird. So like those kinds of things, if I had like shit to go back and to like look at pictures and like look at videos or whatever, would probably help me deal with some of the like shit that I went through when I was fucking, a teenager going through the loss of this kid that nobody who's alive now doesn't have. Like nobody who's a high school kid now won't be able to say, oh, I'll just go on their like Facebook page and be able to look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures to remember how much I loved this person. So it's like on one hand it's super positive, but on the other hand, if it never allows you to say, okay, so when's the day where I say today's the day where it's not helpful to just go and look at their Facebook page anymore, because it's like they're gone and the memory is there and that's beautiful, but I need to kind of like accept that and move past it. If I never let my brain kind of internalize them as I never start to forget the things that I need to forget and only remember the things that I want to remember, it's kind of part of the moving on process. And if that shit doesn't happen, maybe that's not great for us. I don't know. It's another 20 minutes we've been talking about this shit since.
These are all enjoyable.
Anymore, but yeah, this is how all of our podcasts always go. We always end up going down rabbit holes and shit. But
And if you're a glutton for punishment,
yeah,
check us out, livemancave.com.
Go listen to episode 27, the never-ending
9-part episode.
podcast. Yeah.
Which we cut into chunk-sized bits for you.
Yes, we did. We did our best to make it fucking doable and listenable for you. There's some good shit. There's some great stuff happening. Feel free to go all the way back. Well, don't go all the way back because it sucks back in the day. But we've been really good for the last 7 years.
Those first episodes were hilarious, though.
We've been real good for the last 7 to 10 years.
The first episode did start with Four Loko. Yeah, this was really enjoyable. I'm really enjoying these Ready Player 2 episodes. I'm really enjoying this game. I'm enjoying watching you play through the game and make your choices, and kind of discussing why and seeing the differences. The next episode, or the next one of these will be Mission 7,
right?
And it'll be called Stormy Night, and we're going back to Kara.
Okay, nice. A little switch over. I thought it was going to be a Stormy Daniels thing, but that's cool if it's just Kara.
That saga continues.
This sounds pretty exciting to me. So I'm liking where it's going. Long story short, I'm enjoying this game so far. And I'm excited to see what happens with Kara next after the whole weirdness with whatever her fucking owner is and his weird relationship with his daughter. So we'll see what happens there. But this has been a good one.
Will more red ice be snorted?
Yeah. And will we drink more? Spoiler alert, the answer is yes.
Absolutely. Craig, I gotta confess, I only made it through 2 of those fucking beers. I couldn't stomach anymore. They're gross. They're fucking gross.
Or did you literally only have 2 beers?
No, that was the only one I had in my house. I had a 6-pack.
Nice.
I just couldn't make it through. Like, after those first 2, I was like, oh no. I switched over to fucking Arizona mango iced tea.
Nice. Okay. Wow, you made a hard turn.
Like, I don't have any more. It was either that or hard liquor, and I was like, I'm not going hard liquor at this point. And,
probably not ready.
But I just don't want to right now anymore. But it just took me forever to get through those first 2 because every sip was like, I should have just attached a clothespin to my nose.
Right. Yeah, sounds terrible.
I could have just chugged them.
I did switch over to. I had a refill from the Grand Cru, the Winter Grand Cru that I had on the last time we did the podcast. I switched over after.
Nice. So you're having
my first two, and then I had the Grand Cru as my 3rd beer, and then that's what I'm on right now.
So like you and I are like trading places, like before the switch. You're like dun, 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 enjoying like your nice music, your beautiful car, your beautiful home, your many different medley of Christmas beers, and I'm drinking like I'm fucking slumming it like a hobo with fucking Budweiser. Exactly. Oh, throwing up on myself.
Yes, exactly.
Fucking gross.
That, by the way, I just switched over randomly. I just wanted to tell you, I switched over to the Friends stats in this episode, and I am pretty sure right now everything is 100% except for Analyze Backyard is the only thing that you didn't do. Everything else we did exactly 100%. That's the first time we've done that. That's the first time that's happened in this episode where we've had, or any episode where we have been like 100% in lockstep on every single thing.
Yeah, I made all the same choices.
So we're thinking alike. That's pretty baller. All right, dude. On that note,
all right, man.
We're about to
take a like
and sign this one off. And I'm going to
yes, sir.
Maybe drink some more. Maybe go to sleep. We'll see what happens.
If you don't go to sleep, let's play some Jackbox.
There you go.
Jackbox.
All right, man. All right, we'll figure it out in a minute. All right, dude. Thank you very much. I will talk to you in a little bit.
Holla.
Peace.